mercy, Daddy. It's the Jim Cornette experience, brother. We're going to talk about stuff, mama. It's going to be wild and crazy, brother. And now here's my co-host, baby, the great Brian Last, baby daddy. Woo!
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again. I'm not the only one smoking in the morning, it sounds like. What's going on over there?
Well, you know, our schedule has been so disrupted over this past week, and we've talked about it on the various shows. People haven't known when these things are coming out, when we're going to talk about stuff. Obviously, we're trying to finish our week of catch up and get back on the right track today. Everybody knows I had the trip to Tennessee and back this past week, but also we now can report, I guess, on the latest Arcadian Vanguard new product launch that we teased last week on one of these shows that has come to fruition.
That's right, and we'll talk about it later on during the 605 plugs. The new episode of Charting the Territories is out right now. Want everyone to check that out.
I wasn't talking about the Charting the Territories episode. I was talking about the other new product launch. You want to save that for?
I guess we can say that.
I mean, we're burying a lead here if we just bury it back in the 605 department.
I guess so. I'm very happy to say that Suzanne and I welcomed our son into the world the other day. And I, unlike every single other person in or around wrestling, successfully kept this quiet for over 9 months because nobody in wrestling can keep a secret like the great Brian Last. Nobody knew. Very few people knew. But we're overjoyed.
Oh, you calling me nobody, eh?
You knew. You're one of the few people, and I could trust you because you're one of the few people that can keep a secret in wrestling.
Keep a secret in wrestling.
But no, we're very happy, and I am exhausted. It's one of the reasons I've been terribly exhausted the last week or so of the shows, and that's one of the reasons from my end the shows have been a bit delayed. Things have been a bit chaotic the last month, but returning to sleep and food, and hopefully lots of energy, but everyone's very happy, and it's a wonderful time in the world.
And this is the closest thing I have to a hip, hip, hooray, I guess, but it's...
All right. You may not have a hip, hip, hooray, but you may have a hip replacement soon.
That may be entirely possible. And by the way, when does your new son's podcast start?
He has to wait to see if I can get him under contract first.
Is he not signed?
I don't know. He's talking to Steven. I'm in trouble.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Big trouble.
If he's already retained Stephen P. New, I have a feeling he's going to be one of those talents that you spend a lot of your time and attention on.
I just hope I'm not defamed. That's my big thing.
I think if I were you, I'd be pretty generous at Christmas this year just to see what happens. And while we're on the subject of birthdays and people being born and coming into the world, happy birthday, Stacey Cornette, which...
Happy birthday. Hip, hip, hooray.
Hip, hip. Wait a minute. Hold on. I won't say which birthday it is. She's older than the baby. But if you do your job right and this show comes out on August 29th, then that will indeed be her birthday. So we're going to dine in at a restaurant for the first time in 19 months.
Wow, you really love her.
We did make and it's a nice place. I'm not going to say exactly which one, just in case there's anybody out there that wants to try to hop in and get a free meal with us. But we did make the reservation for earlier in the day, whereas like the senior discount time where they're not as crowded for dinner at this place. But I'm going out and publicly eating food, and that will be a good thing. And hopefully we'll be over in the corner. And I think the plexiglass shields that I ordered will be in time, and they're having to do an install. We had to get, I got Hotchkiss on the city building codes.
Oh, come on.
To make sure that, when we're erecting a structure inside the restaurant to wall it off in effect from the rest of the patrons, there's certain permits you have to get.
Of course, but you haven't given him enough time-sensitive projects to complete, high-stress projects, and now you're going to give him this?
Well, he's capable of handling it. He is capable of handling it. Because all those years he was on meth, he's used to being on the edge of the lightning bolt, right? But now he's reformed.
Are you saying Dusty was on meth?
No, I'm saying Hotchkiss. Where'd Dusty come?
Edge of the lightning bolt. I think the Dusty promo.
Hotchkiss was right there also.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, he's got that. That's where, Dusty had the red spot on his side. Hotchkiss has one of those too. That's where the edge of that lightning bolt they were riding on.
It went right to the splotch.
It went right to the splotch. But anyway, Hotchkiss's other high-stress activity this week will be, of course, the debut of the all-new, highly improved JimCornette.com. The website's new. The online store, the Cornette's Collectibles store, is new. Everything going to be new. I've been inviting everybody to come, even if you don't want to buy anything. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. Just get on the site. I've double dog dared people to crash this site. Hotchkiss, as I mentioned, is shaking like a dog shitting peach seeds. No, he's confident. We have got every single box of extra server that we had in the closet in the garage out, and he's hooked that all up. So we're hooked up to boxes and boxes of extra server. So no matter what the traffic is, you shouldn't be able to crash this one. However, as I've mentioned, and I'll say this, the Cornette's Collectibles store will be open. It'll be an all-new shopping experience. We're taking major credit cards now as well as PayPal. It should be a lovely experience, but that's going to be open from, as I mentioned, Saturday, September 4th at 10 a.m. Eastern for 1 week. Then the site will remain up because it's going to link you to everything. Our YouTube channel, the Patreon, cameos when those are available. Not only the store, my updated biography, other projects that we're going to be developing. You can go to everything from this. But I'm keeping the store up for 1 week because we know that the action figures that remain, these are the last ones, they are probably going to go quickly. And also, we've only actually had products on sale for 16 days so far this year. So there's a bit of pent-up demand. I've been getting some nasty emails. Say, when are you going to open this thing? I want a fucking T-shirt. So I am anticipating after a week, it'll be like last time where I'm somewhat inundated, and I will be closing the store to fill those orders, and then we hope within 4 to 6 weeks, and that should then allow us to open up for a brief period of time so that I can get people some holiday enjoyment and cheer in their life. But just in case that we can't open up again for the holidays because there's not enough time to turn around and fill all that stuff, if you want some for Christmas, get it between the 4th and the 11th of September. And then hide it in your closet and forget you've got it. And then when Christmas comes, you'll be surprised. Isn't that what you do with your kids anyway?
Well, we do Christmas and Hanukkah, so it is a ton of gifts to hide.
Well, that's why you got that shed put up in the back to hide the gifts, right? Especially now you got, 7 kids? So that could get, you need another house. You need to buy a house next to your house and put the kids next door. They need a lot of room.
Another house sounds like a plan. We'll see what happens.
But it's got to be next door so you can keep an eye on them.
We'll see what happens.
Can the 4-year-old cook yet?
Actually, I think she's helping with pancakes right now downstairs.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, see, then they'll be just have somebody come in to run the vacuum cleaner once a week, and they'll be fine. Anyway, so what we are going to comment or review or touch on the NXT and AEW programs from this past week so we can get all caught up to date. And then this week on the drive-through, if anything happened on SmackDown of interest, we will talk about that, and we will have bunches of questions and entertaining songs. And we should be all caught up at this point, right?
With entertaining songs, I don't know about. With the shows,
no, I don't.
Probably.
I mean, caught up with all the topical news that we've been missing. We've had a time lag on because of our various schedules.
I think so. I think we're almost caught up now.
Well, we'll work on that then. And I have an email real quickly before we go to the wrestling talk this week on the program. This is an email from Charlie from Starkville.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, sure.
No, it is not Charlie from Starkville. It's an email from his email address is Charlie from Starkville. So obviously, Charlie, being a celebrity, has spawned a number of imitators. But anyway, he has a good point here, and I wanted to bring this up because it just shows the difference in the way that people, not only people think about the wrestling business, but the way that it's presented these days. And Charlie says, Jim, I totally agree with you that attempted comedy and not taking professional wrestling seriously is what is killing viewership today, which is why I would like to get your take on midget wrestling. Like many back in the day, I became a fan of professional wrestling because my grandmother and great aunts loved to watch it while babysitting my cousins and me. They generally took it seriously as fans until the midget wrestlers came. Grandma's favorites were always the midget wrestlers because she found them entertaining and funny. But looking back at some of the old midget matches, they were clearly choreographed in what today we would call comedy wrestling. Spots like switching partners halfway through a tag match, biting the referee's butt, midget wrestlers from opposing sides clearly collaborating in the ring to make something funny come about. My question for you, Jim, is how, well, and I'll answer for you, Charlie, is how was midget wrestling justified back in the day as not exposing the business through comedy spots? And this is an interesting question because it goes to the difference in the way that everything was presented as a whole between then and now. First of all, you had the midgets once or twice a year. Some places you didn't really have them at all. Some places you had them more often. I know in the Northeast, Vince Sr. used to like to have a midget tag, even in the big arenas, 2 or 3 or 4 times a year, it seems like in some of those old ads, you would see that.
When I was a kid, when I first started going to shows, it was the Christmas time tradition at the Garden.
Yes. And it was for the kids. And, again, this email says they generally took it seriously as fans until the midget wrestlers came. The difference in the way that this was presented versus the rest of the wrestling, and because of, honestly, the size difference of the guys involved, they knew it was not to be taken seriously. The fans saw it, because, I saw it when I was a kid, and I saw the people around me. And the same people that be laughing at the spot where the referee catches the guy and throws him back on the cover would be trying to get in the ring and pull a knife out to kill the fucking heel 3 matches later. Because the midget matches were clearly presented and performed not to be taken seriously by very talented athletes. Those guys, some of them especially, were incredible. But it was a parody of the real matches on the show that the real wrestlers did. But this was for the kids and for a laugh at holiday time or whatever. And that's the way the people took it. And even if you had the fans that, believed wrestling and everything about it, and you also had the people that knew that there was some work to it or whatever and could still get into it and could still lose themselves, they looked at this as at a completely different way, as these guys are doing an obvious and intentional parody of what the big real wrestlers do. And also, to be honest, none of the midgets were hitting each other like fucking Stan Hansen with a lariat, or throwing punches like Lawler or Funk, or doing the knee off the top like Bobby Eaton. It didn't really look like it's going to hurt anybody anyway. And they had their methods of selling that didn't look like the big guys. Remember, they used to stand Skylo Low up on his bald head and spin him like a top, and he could fucking spin and keep his feet up in the air. The difference was none of the full-sized wrestlers were doing that shit. And so there wasn't the obvious cooperation. There wasn't ridiculously over-the-top, silly comedy. If there was comedy, it was to make the fucking heel fall on his ass and be mad, but then he'd be serious about it. So it was a completely different product. So that there was some differentiation in the people's minds. It's subliminal, but it's there. It's context. It's the way that you take things because of the way that they have traditionally been presented. It was the same reason why that Young Frankenstein, people could laugh at the Frankenstein monster because it was an obvious parody. It wasn't supposed to be scary. This wasn't supposed to be real wrestling like the other guys do. The problem is now, in almost every company, half the guys on the roster are doing the parody wrestling spots. And the supposed grown men. And that's now there's no differentiation. I bet if you got a video of 5 or 6 of the best midget tag team matches that are on record somewhere and played them, you would see of more of the flavor of the AEW tag matches where nothing makes a lick of sense and everybody's just having fun. You'd see more similarity to that than you would to tag team matches that were filmed at the same time that the midget tag matches were. It's a completely different looking product now. So, but that was, as I've said many times, subliminal images and just the visuals sometimes are what people take away. Casual people that might get interested in something, they don't sit there and take notes when they first look at something on the backstory and the details. They just see what they're looking at. And even if people are interested in something over a period of time, if you give them the wrong type of images over and over, they start to fart at shit instead of remaining to be interested in it. Does that make any sense, Brian?
I think so. And I think there's an element. I don't want to say the matches today are just the modern version of the classic midget tag team matches, but there's an element of what you say there that I could see.
I didn't say all of them, and I said more similarity to than not.
I think there's a similarity maybe in the hairline of Sky Lolo and some of the Cucamonga kids, but I don't know about anything else.
Well, actually, speaking of hairlines, see, the difference is when the fans back then were saying, the midgets, they're kids. They're not to be taken seriously in this instance, but the grown men, they got hair all over them. They're definitely beastly and vicious because they got hair all over them. Chest, back, arms, legs, crotch, taint, the whole 9 yards. And folks, if you don't want to be taken as beastly or even stinky, you need more hair on your head, but you need less hair on the rest of your body, and that's where our fine friends. Well, see, it's a thing here where you've got to fucking take care of the hair you want and get rid of the hair you don't want. And the hair you don't want is what turns your crotch into a swamp in the summertime, especially it's been 96 degrees around here with 105 heat index. You do not want all those wet, moist bushes growing in Taint Valley, in between Sphincter Pass and Peony Tower. So anyway,
this isn't in the copy.
This is not in the copy at all. Well, they said to Houston, do we have a pube problem? And I switched that. But nevertheless, our friends at Manscaped will help you in your efforts not to be beastly to your significant others or better halves, or if you've been vaccinated and you're willing to just flitter around about in public, you want to make sure that you don't stink like a man eating fromunda cheese in a septic tank of a slaughterhouse. So look no further than the Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped. You've got the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. We've talked about that with the cutting-edge ceramic blade. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor, a multi-function on and off switch. It's got the LED light. You can't gig yourself with this thing. Also in the Performance Package, the Weed Whacker ear and nose trimmer. So you don't have all those straggly, Hotchkiss. I had to mention that to him because what he was doing was he was waiting until his nose hair grew down to his top lip and then he was shaving it. But I said, no, you can actually get up in that bad boy and take care of that before it's visible. Anyway, they've also got the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, the Crop Reviver Toner, the Performance Boxer Briefs, a travel bag, all this stuff. And folks, if you go right now to manscaped.com/JCE, you can get 20% off and free shipping. 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com/JCE. You know these guys are our favorites. We've been loving them, and they've been loving us back for ages. So go get this stuff and straighten up. A new day, a new coat of paint. Fix yourself up. Clean yourself up. Be slicker than cum on a gold tooth with Manscaped. Well, boy, I tell you, if you want a close shave, by the way, apparently Nick Khan is the man, because he's cutting and slashing prices to the bone up there at the WWE, releasing a bunch of people, letting a bunch of people go, administrating the company like Hollywood, as we mentioned on your show. What's the name of that show again? The Drive-Thru a couple days ago.
Technically, yeah. Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru is the name of the show.
We talked about all of the people that have, been mistreated or there's bad blood or ill will, or they just want to get the hell out of there and they're being allowed to go and let go, and administrative issues. But also just the way that, do you not take it that Nick Khan, and you've said this all along, that he wants to, get the thing ready to sell to some multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, and they'll have theme parks and goddamn, to give it the Disney World treatment. But he's treating this like a Hollywood studio where you can just replace actors, where you just open for business, we'll deal with anybody, blah, blah, blah. He's had some other comments, which you're going to read. I'm going to let you in a second. But, this guy might be good for show business, but it's still at the heart of it, wrestling. And does he know what the fuck he's doing? I wonder.
I think he absolutely knows what he's doing as an agent and a deal maker. As an executive, time will tell.
In a wrestling company.
Well, even beyond that, just
he's a great executive. As an executive at a wrestling company, don't you think time will tell?
Well, even beyond that, I think, I look at agents as almost like a separate thing. And a lot of the times when agents in sports or entertainment transition into working for a real company, it doesn't always go great. So far, it's going really well for him. But it's not always an easy transition. The Mets had a general manager who was the agent for some of the star players. It did not go well for 2 years. Mike Ovitz was the most successful agent of his time. He went to Disney. It's an epic disaster what happened there. Right away, he got his balls cut off, and he never recovered. It's always difficult, but an agent is an agent. They're about relationships and deals. That's it. I believe Nick Khan is there for a specific reason, because he's getting WWE, or they're getting WWE geared up for a sale. I said a long time back, I thought there would be a big stock buyback. There was a stock buyback, not a big one. We'll see what happens, but I think this is all about setting it up for a sale. And before I even get to the quotes you're talking about, because this ends up being referenced and I guess kind of walked back in a sense, Nick Khan was recently on an episode of the Recode Media Show. I don't know what that is. And they asked him about the rumors of WWE being up for sale.
I think that's sponsored by Code Academy.
I don't know about that. It's a different kind of code, I think. But he was asked about the rumors of a sale, and his quote was, "We're open for business on anything and everything. Even some of the business plans that we've announced recently are different and unique to what the company has traditionally done. We're open for business. If somebody called, we'll listen. But we're not active or out on the marketplace trying to change that structure." And let me just stop right there. There's no CEO or president of a company that's going to go, "Yes, buy us, please. We are absolutely out there. We want you to please come in here and buy us." No, he's being coy, but you'll read between the lines.
Please buy us.
You could see what he's saying there. Also, here's another quote from that interview. He does not believe he will be the main person running the company if Vince McMahon steps down. Quote, "I don't think Vince has any plans, nor, in my opinion, should he, of stepping aside." Another ass kisser. Of stepping aside. He's 75. He'll be 76 in a couple of weeks. He's healthy. He's strong. Maybe he goes another 50 years, and you'll be asking me this in 49 years. Two answers right there to tell you a little bit about who Nick Khan is.
But also, I mean, he obviously, I can get when he says, I don't think Vince has any plans of stepping aside, nor should he. That can cover that quite nicely with, he's still the boss without going into, he's going to live another 50 years. I think that may be optimistic or pessimistic, whichever side of the fence you're on.
I've seen his face. He ain't living another 50 years.
But, well, now, wait a minute. We don't know what part of him may be able to be, transplanted into another body or what he's a billionaire now. Maybe he's got some experiments going. He said in an interview one time, I can't remember if it was the big Playboy interview or whatever it was, but where he said, I will die a very frustrated man because there'll be so many things left to do. I'm sure he's been looking for a way around that. So maybe there's a robot body the brain will be transplanted into. Nevertheless, point is, Nick Khan sounds like a guy that also doesn't plan to be in the wrestling business for the rest of his life by that answer. Because he very carefully didn't answer, are you going to be the guy to run the company? No, Vince shouldn't step down. Do you honestly think that he has got the dream? I've always wanted to be in the wrestling business. No, as soon as they do whatever they are going to do that Nick Khan was brought in for, whether it's trim the budget and make the thing run like a Hollywood studio or sell it or turn it completely into Holiday on Ice and a wrestling ring or whatever, then don't you think he's on to some greener pasture, something else?
Here's the other thing. He wasn't just an agent. He was their agent. And they asked him to be the president of the company. If you were going to sell the company, who else would you ask to be the president of the company? He's the agent. He's the guy who's done all their deals. He knows all their deals inside and out. He's there for a specific reason. Why else would they approach their agent, who they have a fantastic relationship with, he's doing a great job, and say, we want you to stop doing that, but come over here and help us with all these other departments, including the creative, which is a fucking mess. But no, he's not helping out with creative, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's a reason he is there, and they're going to have to convince me otherwise. I've been saying it since before he was hired for that position. They're gearing up for a sale.
What else was he commenting on?
So after the interview I quoted to you earlier, he was on another show, I don't know the name of the show, BT Sport, with Ariel Helwani, who's also getting some criticism because a lot of people are saying that he's now become a little bit of a WWE kiss-ass on his interviews, but we'll see what happens there. The quote from Ariel Helwani was, I heard you on the Recode podcast. You mentioned that we're open for business. I take calls. I'm not actively pursuing anything. I take calls. And the theory is that they want to sell. They want to sell. What does open for business mean? And Nick Khan's response? So here's what I mean by that. And by the way, on the Recode podcast, as a couple of the producers referred to in that building, this is your building apparently. They say, this is Ariel, he's kissing Ariel Helwani's ass. Where's the fucking answer here?
He's
the buzz
kissing Ariel Helwani's ass.
The whole fucking paragraph. And by the way, these transcriptions are courtesy of the good people over at PW Insider Elite, Dave Shearer, Mike Johnson. They do a great job. Check them out, pwinsiderelite.com.
Yeah, these transcriptions are not their fault because these people actually say these things.
That's right.
So,
couple of things. The number one, I want to say we're open for business. That means if somebody credible calls on anything, NFT, trading cards, international rights, we take the call. We're inherently salespeople, meaning we're sort of like, no, we don't want to talk to this company because we think they're X. If you call and you want to pitch us something and you're credible coming, we're going to hear the pitch. We're an entrepreneurial company that Vince and others built over the last 35 years or so. And we always want to stay fresh and entrepreneurial in our minds. When I say open for business, if somebody calls, credible, asking, hey, are you guys for sale? It's, what's your offer? What are you thinking? We're not trying to sell it. That's not our intent. There are no internal meetings about selling the company. The internal meetings are about growing it. And the ability that we think we collectively have to tremendously grow the value of the company is now. And there is a quote.
Boy, he is an agent, isn't he?
And then he goes back to playing games with Ariel Helwani here in this section, yes.
So basically, he says, well, if Justin Credible calls us and wants to buy the WWE, you can twist our arm and we'll let Justin Credible buy the WWE.
We are not for sale. However, if Brian Roberts from Comcast gets on the phone, we'll say, yeah, how much you thinking? What are you talking about? And then as soon as we hang up, we'll jump up and down and have a couple of drinks. Read between the lines. This guy's telling you everything.
And again, I have to be in the camp of the great Brian Last. I'm following your sage business advice there. I believe he's trying to say, people, we're over here. We'll take your call. I'm on the phone all the time.
By the way, this guy, he did the Recode interview. He did this Ariel Helwani interview. Why all of a sudden is he on a press tour? Why all of a sudden is the WWE president doing multiple interviews? What's the point of that? What is the point you're trying to get across with that?
Well, I'm just a small town bird lawyer, and I don't know nothing about birthing these big business deals and such, but I know a little bit about wrestling, and it's not like Hollywood in that you cannot let all of these major names in their own way, whether they're active or like a Bray Wyatt, or whether they're legends like Ric Flair or whatever, the list that we talked about on the drive-through, the clip is up now, I'm sure, on YouTube by this point. You can't let all these guys go at the same time, coming on the heels of CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. And it's not like Hollywood in that, yeah, there's a million box office attractions and as far as actors and or directors that you could attach a name to, etc. No, these are people. Do you think the Hollywood guy doesn't understand that these are individual people that, regardless whether they own their gimmick name or not, the fans accept them as individual people that cannot be replicated? You can't just get another actor to play the part in the franchise. It doesn't work that way. And they're handing, they haven't had, the WWE has not had this level of financial opposition since Turner Broadcasting was into it as far as they got in the late 90s. But at the same time, the opposition that the WWE had in the 90s was more credible in the ring and more credible in terms of a balanced talent roster to begin with, even before they really started stealing the Halls and Nashes. This program, AEW, started out as an indie-rific wet dream, and in the past 2 years, they have turned over to them what now? I didn't count the list, but they've at least a dozen fairly major level names, and most of those have come in the last several months. So now all of us, they're handing these people over to the guy with a lot of money when his clear, glaring weaknesses as competition to the WWE were he doesn't have major players and he doesn't know how to book. Well, now they've cleared up the major player situation the WWE has for them by letting them have a bunch. He still don't know how to book, but now he's got the money, he's got the TV, and he's got the names. So what the fuck is Nick Khan doing here? Because now we can't even say as a Vince didn't used to just say, oh, I got a guy on a fucking mega contract and I've been using him in main events, but I'll let him go ahead and release him. We're worried about the budget. No, he'd take the fucking water coolers off the 4th floor and he'd cut all the fucking wrestling staff's salary by 40%, but he never ran his top guys off. The only one he ever, Jerry Jarrett used to claim poverty all the time. He was just a poor Southern wrestling promoter. He'd claim budget with everybody. But Vince, has he actually only ever said to one person, was it Bret Hart? The only one I just can't pay you. Go away. I'll help you go to the other place. Has he ever assisted anyone, especially for budgetary reasons, in going to competition?
Other than Brett, I can't remember any other instance, no.
So I'm seeing a lot of this Nick Khan. Maybe Nick Khan's, the one that painted the new NXT logo. You think?
If you have a band and you manage them, do you treat the members like they're the Beatles, or do you treat them like they're Menudo? Just replaceable widgets. Just throw someone else in there. That's the new person. He doesn't know anything about wrestling. He's a talented agent. He knows how to make a deal. He knows nothing about wrestling except what the WWE's wrestling people have put in his head.
And then, if history is any account, may have discounted some of that because they're wrestling people. And business people don't like to listen to wrestling people, historically.
He may truly believe in the WWE star system and Vince's magic touch, just creating stars and this amazing company. You always hear these outsiders. This amazing company, they churn out all this amazing content and they have all these stars. Yeah, it's just no one cheers for any of them and no one gives a fuck. And you're chasing them off and you're giving them less and less reason to stay. Let's continue on this topic because the next series of quotes I have here, once again, courtesy the transcription of PW Insider Elite. This is about the talent cuts. So this ties into what we're talking about here. Here is Nick Khan on being blamed for WWE cuts over the last year. Quote, "There's a collective of us. And keep in mind, at WWE, as you know, there's one boss. That's Vince. As we all know." So he said that twice there. Hold on. And keep in mind, at WWE, as you know, there's one boss. That's Vince. As we all know. All right.
I'm glad we know that.
I'm glad we know that. So between Bruce Pritchard, who oversees the entire creative process.
Oh, brother.
Between Kevin Dunn, who oversees our production. Between Stephanie McMahon, Paul Levesque, all are involved in these decisions, with ultimately Vince making the final decision on everything. And the second quote, referring to why there have been so many releases. Here it is. "I don't know that there's one explanation for it. I think ultimately what's looked at is this person for us going to move the needle now or in the imminent future? By the way, we had a 2-day tryout in Las Vegas, which ended yesterday, which Triple H and Johnny Laurinaitis and Bruce Pritchard were all at, as were the rest of us. We've signed over a dozen new talent coming out of that tryout, and I'm not suggesting that's why we cut the other talent, but we're always looking for what's next. We live in the present. We live in the future. Pick one. We live in the present. We live in the future. We don't live in the past. So when people leave, they move on with their life and their careers. That's good by us. For us, it's what works for us and our product at the moment in time. And again, what's going to work down the road. And largely in part, the existing roster is based on that."
Well, that was a word salad.
He says nothing in the most glorious way.
There's a lot of words there. Look here. Am I under the mistaken assumption that they've said they're not going to sign any more independent wrestlers, or is that what they've said? And that this tryout was primarily non-wrestlers that want to be wrestlers. That's what I've heard. Is that the case?
I'm not sure if it's an official edict, but I've heard the same thing. The word is don't look for indie wrestlers, look for wrestlers we can mold into the WWE way.
Well, point is, especially with the NXT track record of keeping the best workers the longest and sending the least accomplished to the main roster the quickest, if they just signed these guys from this tryout camp last week or whenever this interview took place, they're going to be 2 years, especially if they've got to train them from scratch. So that doesn't explain, let's just drop Bray Wyatt and Flair's not happy because we pissed him off because of his daughter's creative. His son-in-law's over there. Let's let him go too, because then Charlotte will want to go. We'll just get rid of our best female when her contract is up and she's available. Cole, we don't know what the fuck's going on there. Bray Wyatt that they burned alive, that's their fault, not his. Danielson, all these guys, and he's crowing that they just signed some walk-ons at their tryout camp last week.
Well, I have some more quotes about this.
Oh, please.
And this ties into the reboot of NXT that is coming. Everything's going to change. Look for it in the next couple of weeks. It's going to have a whole new look. It's going to have a whole new feel. And we believe, because a lot of the indie wrestlers, if you will, have come through our system and are in our system with SmackDown and Raw now, we don't want to just keep doing the same thing. We want to look elsewhere for great young talent. So what we found, it's part of why we did the tryout yesterday. What we want to make sure is easy for folks who want to be WWE superstars is figuring out how to become WWE superstars. Well, hold on right there.
Wait. Now, hold on. First of all, what I got was we're running a hospital, and so we've had a lot of doctors. We want to try to get away from that. We don't want people that have experience in medicine. We want to bring people into the doctoring game. And then what was his exact quote that you just tried to read?
And I don't think it would be the hospital. It would probably be the medical facility. But the quote from the second part here is about the tryouts in Las Vegas. What we want to make sure is easy for folks who want to be WWE superstars is figuring out how to become WWE superstars. So if you think of the life of an elevated athlete throughout their career, the opportunity to go play somewhere has always been easy. Being able to play somewhere is not. That's what's hard. But if you're an amazing high school football player, college comes after you. You get recruited. You go into their system. And either you make it or you don't make it. Again, all that it takes to get there, very difficult. Again, the transcription here, I'm not reading it exactly how he would say it probably, but the system is not difficult from my point of view. So we want our system to be an easy system where people who want to be superstars, they know how to get to us and we can get to them.
Oh, God.
If you were afraid of the backyard people.
Oh, my God. So he's just inviting people to walk in off the street and, hey, we'll get you in the wrestling business. Oh, my God. That's what, if anything, just the way that these people look at wrestling. I know he's talking about high-level athletes. The problem is there's plenty of high-level athletes. There's not a lot of high-level athletes that understand how to think about the wrestling business until you teach them. And the problem here is that the people that are actively soliciting these people to come in don't know how to fucking teach them because they don't know how to think about the wrestling business. He's casting fucking major motion pictures and sitcoms. If there was, at least the independent wrestling system did weed out people who didn't want to be in the business and didn't want to take the fucking bumps. It just taught a lot of bad habits. But if you caught prospects quickly enough and you had a training program that would break them of bad habits, Ohio Valley Wrestling, then you could produce good wrestlers because they already wanted to do it. But now you'll get a bunch of jack-offs that think because they were hotshots in college football that they can go be fucking multimillionaire wrestlers. And they'll put them right on TV and they'll get the goddamn big head and they'll never have learned a fucking thing about the actual wrestling business because this is the only system they'll have ever been in. And you get a bunch of goddamn eggheads. There you go.
And, the thing, too, is let's just say that they're not telling the complete truth. And maybe there will be some indie wrestlers that pop up over the next few years that they want. If you're an indie wrestler and you have an opportunity to pick where you go, and it's Nick Khan and interviews like this, and Vince or Tony Khan, who comes across like a fan who you're going to enjoy working for, where are you going to go?
Well, and more than that, we already know about the mindset of most guys in the independents these days, so they will naturally go to work for the nice guy that will let them do anything they want and be all, fucking concerned about their needs. Whereas if there was an option that was better for you, nobody went to work for Bill Watts because he would be concerned about their needs, let them do anything they want to do, and be the nicest boss they ever had. And even money-wise. Everybody said, well, even if you're on top for Mid-South Wrestling for Bill Watts, you'll make twice as much money as most anywhere else and half what you ought to make, which was true. But you went to learn because he made superstars, because he made wrestling savants, because he'd learned from them. And he made stars, and he gave you an education. And it was working in a place like that was like working in Florida to get to work with Eddie Graham, or working in Texas to get to work with the fucking Dory Funk Sr. at his time, or whatever. But no, now all the independent wrestlers that think they ought to be able to do whatever the fuck they want to do anyway will go to work for Tony Khan, who will let them do whatever the fuck they want to do, because these idiots over here think they're running a goddamn theme park with interchangeable characters that they own the intellectual property to, and they can just train more of them. And so that's not only bad for the WWE, but also continuingly bad for the wrestling business, which it doesn't need any more bad news.
Jim, before we wrap this up, another couple of quotes here, because this is another one that a lot of people started talking about on the topic of Raw and SmackDown. Here's Nick Khan. Listen, I think both shows are great right now. I think what Roman has developed as this monster heel has been amazing for television. The Cena return, as you know, your hero's only as good as your villain's only as good as your hero. So Cena, Roman, we love that main event. At the same time, if you look at what's happening on Raw, we think a lot of the talent that people saw as developing talent are now crossing over. So both shows are equally impressive to me, and we love the fact that in certain pay-per-views, you get matches from both brands across it, and tomorrow night SummerSlam...
Wait a minute, certain pay-per-views? Don't they do that on every pay-per-view these days?
I think so, and boy, what a big fluff answer that was, but here's...
I was about to say it, besides nothing of substance, he's not even watching his own shows. Every match is for somebody's title.
The one that got a lot of people's attention was this. From my point of view, Raw would benefit from being 4 hours. So we can get paid more money.
Oh.
And SmackDown would be 8 hours. But I understand that our creative folks, as amazing as they are, there's only so much great content they can do on a weekly basis.
Yeah, we found out it's about 45 minutes already.
So we're good with 3 and 2 system. 3 and 2 system. I guess that's the hours. The 3 and 2 system for Raw and SmackDown.
Well, he was being facetious about SmackDown being 8 hours. Hey, if you think the fucking full director's cut of Intolerance was hard to watch, imagine an 8-hour SmackDown. Holy crap.
It's not what he's saying. Look, I understand an agent's point of view is
yes.
The more time, the more money. It's just, I think what upset people was the idea of saying that out loud is completely ignoring how counterproductive it has been despite the extra television money. And that's really the big thing, is the television money. But in terms of the actual content and the creative and everything else, all these hours are killing the product.
Well, and I think any serious answer in public from this guy, the thought of getting one, that thought's already left the barn along with the horse, right? He's not going to say anything serious like, yeah, boy, it has been a problem, 3 hours of Raw and the creative, holy shit, and we ain't making... He's not going to say anything like that's actually pertinent. So he's going to do rah-rah interviews and wave at people who might call him on the phone. But it just, the mindset of it, I'm not saying that's his mindset in private, that he doesn't know that there are problems, but I don't think that this guy or anybody else that's never been involved with a wrestling company knows how to solve those problems. I don't think he's cognizant of what the problems are. And I'm sure he's been a wrestling agent. He was a wrestling fan because, oh, look, I get pictures with my arm around Stone Cold and that type of thing. He wasn't a fan watching he wasn't a tape trader when he was a kid. He wasn't going out of his way to watch territory wrestling. So he's not that kind of wrestling fan, and somebody with some element of what goes into this and what the fans like about guys, and that knowledge needs to be there somewhere.
Well, it ain't there, but that's the Nick Khan interview that everyone's talking about.
Well, and speaking of changes in operation, and I mentioned this a few minutes ago, but the new NXT logo, and what are they going to do to my show, Ma? I watch NXT because if you see something good, which is intermittent at best on any of the wrestling shows, it's generally going to be on NXT as far as a good match and with professionals involved. And now they're going to change all that. God damn it, Cornette has said a few good things about this program. We've got to revamp this whole thing. But the new NXT logo they put out a video of their new logo. It's like 15 seconds long. I watched it on Twitter. The rapper Whale is doing some music. I put music in quotation marks.
I think it's Wale.
Well, Wale, ole. Whatever the fuck. Whale, Wally, whatever. If it's Wally, that's fine. If it's Beaver, that's fine. I don't care. Wally and the Beaver. I don't care. The point is, he's got alleged music behind this, and the new logo looks like, I don't know if it's kids finger painting, a psychedelic acid trip, some Ralph Bakshi animation from the 70s. Are they trying? Is it a Grateful Dead fucking bus that they're painting? What? Good God. What are they doing to NXT now?
Well, you and I are longtime wrestling fans, and we watched NXT, and in the past we said, it is very dark. Imagine if someone who's not a wrestling fan saw that and go, yo, we should just fill this up with light. And I don't know what that logo is. It kind of reminds me of like Caddyshack 2, and all of a sudden Jackie Mason gets control of the golf course and his roller coasters and Ferris wheels and all sorts of stuff. What's going to happen to NXT? Are they about to do that? Is NXT about to become this bright, youthful show? We'll see.
Well, yes, they do need a little lighting in the arena. We've said that. But on the logo, it looks like a Rorschach test. I don't think they needed to change the entire logo as much as and the look of the show as much as they need to change some of the talent that they feature on it, pep it up a little bit, and throw another extra spotlight or two onto the ring. But again, they've said they'll go too far with anything, because I know Bruce and Johnny Ace down there going, look, all these guys are too small. We've heard that. They want the big guys, like Johnny Ace wants to go out and find his 2 left-footed 6'5" guys. They overlook the fact that there shouldn't be a rule of thumb about anything. If there was a size rule, they wouldn't have got Rey Mysterio. It just, what happens is when you go too far with it and everybody looks, they cut that Jake Atlas. Remember I said the most boring human being in the world. And he was featured on every NXT TV show there for a while when you couldn't find Austin Theory in a police lineup. And if you showed him, I would think, to Johnny Ace or Bruce Pritchard, they would even be on board with an Austin Theory, because he can work, but he's also got the size and the fucking face and the whole 9 yards. But they see a guy like a fucking Johnny Sameface and go, what the fuck? Especially if Vince was to see that and go, wait a minute, this guy's been the champion here. All this television time has revolved around this guy. He's 5'6". He's fucking 170 pounds. His wife is bigger than he is. He's got no facial expression, and he does a bunch of fucking spots over and over. That's when you see somebody that obviously was never, ever going to the main roster being featured, that's when they get fucking mad, and then Vince goes all the way the other way. God damn it, everybody's got to be 6'2" and everybody's got to be 230 pounds or I'm going to shit on them. Because he sees one or two things like that and goes, what the fuck? And then Bruce and Johnny Ace enable him. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah.
Knowing how Vince is with things. This is the guy when he got in his fucking sport vehicle that day and started it up, and was backing out of his garage, and he had hit the button on his garage door opener, but he didn't hit it right, and the door didn't open, so he backed into the garage door. Instead of fucking pulling up and hitting the button again, he just said fuck it and kept backing through the goddamn thing, and then fucking called him to fix it. if he sees something that he feels shouldn't be there, he will react all the way over to the other end of the spectrum. And because they were, without doubt, NXT had a bunch of interchangeable, bland, small guys doing indie-style matches. And if he saw that's why he's fucking flipped in the other direction. But at the same time, you didn't need to change everything about NXT because, as I mentioned, with the guys at the top, that's where you got the better performances of any shows. And now they're going to fuck this all up because they couldn't keep the, the eye on, what overall was going to fly with Vince or what wasn't or who could get under the radar. I would have to think Adam Cole would look better in the NXT lineup to Vince McMahon if there weren't 18 other guys that same size, and you could just look at that guy's performance and that guy's promos, and you could hear something about this guy specifically. He could be justified. But instead, they see 15 interchangeable small guys and go, oh, fuck, we're all fucked here. So, I had guys that could work in OVW that I put on television that were still 6 feet tall and they were undersized at 190, but they could fucking perform. And I would get browbeaten about that because they didn't have contracts. I would say, well, they're good workers and they help the fucking show. But I didn't have 15 of them. Anyway, I don't know I'm going to keep watching NXT because I'm going to see what happens to it. We're not going to do full reports. For heaven's sake, on every week, but I'm going to see what happens, whether it goes up, down, north, south, positive or negative or what.
I definitely want to see what the revamp is going to look like or feel like.
I want to see what they do to the roster and the matches they're presenting is what I want to see, because I don't ultimately care what their logo looks like. I just want to know whether they can actually do a good wrestling show. And they've tried in the past. They've got there for some segments. We'll see what happens. What do you think the chances are, Brian?
Chances that NXT will be a good show in the future?
Yeah.
Ooh, 60-40 maybe? Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Then you know what? Then you need to stay away from daily fantasy sports because you don't know your statistics. Did you know that 85% of the people who play daily fantasy sports lose, Brian? Did you know that 100% of the people who predict a pleasing product from the WWE end up in a rubber room at the Puzzle Factory? Were you aware of that?
I was, yes. I believe you said some of those facts on the drive-thru.
Yes, well, a lot of these games are rigged, folks. They're rigged against you, the little guy. But if you've got a big brother, if you've got somebody to take care of you, then you're all right. And that's the folks at Stat Hero. It's the first ever daily fantasy sports book that puts the player in control and winning within reach. Stat Hero shows you their lineups and dares you to beat them. It's you versus the house in a head-to-head fantasy matchup. And most of my fantasies do involve being head-to-head with people. You name your stakes, winner take all, you have the advantage. Stat Hero is showing you their lineups ahead of time, and nobody else does that. You're in total control. Stat Hero is DFS the way it was meant to be, one-on-one, and you can play Stat Hero right now and change the odds. And if you go to stathero.com/JCE and sign up for free right now, you can get 3 times back on your first play. 300% match, that's unheard of. I may even have said that wrong. If you sign up for free and get 3 times back, you'd get 3 times nothing. But you can sign up for free.
It's unheard of.
And then it's unheard of. And then you can get 3 times back on your first play.
That's right.
That's right. And that's been heard of because I just said it. Go to stathero.com/JCE, stathero.com/JCE. Folks, you don't just watch sports. You follow every play at every player. Get the daily fantasy sports book that rewards passion with winning. Stat Hero. Well, while NXT is still somewhat watchable, let's talk about what happened last Tuesday. Did you even watch the program?
I don't think so. No, because I say that because I think I may have seen a few minutes of it, but I can't remember anything that I saw during that time. And I apologize in advance if anyone hears noise. The gardening crew, the fine team, are all outside creating a ruckus, seemingly. I don't know what they're doing, but a lot of noise. I did not see NXT.
Is that the... I can't ever remember the name of Vince's gardeners. The Italian... The Andretti brothers? No, that's not it. But... And well, last Tuesday, you were probably busy. Do you remember seeing poopy diapers last Tuesday?
I've seen a few of those.
Well, then there was several segments of poopy diapers on NXT too. So that's maybe why you're confused. But anyway, we'll briefly, because I wanted to see the fallout from TakeOver, and boy, it certainly fell out. Cameron Grimes is now the $1 Million Man, and he's wearing a vest and a Cameron Grimes outfit made out of the $1 Million Man colors and sequins and dollar signs. And Ted DiBiase is the fatherly millionaire who had been looking for somebody to carry on the $1 Million legacy. And they had an in-ring interview where they loved on each other. Ted talked about all kinds of qualities that were needed, but strong of heart and never being a quitter was the big ones, and the rah-rah speech. And then Cameron gave a dramatic response about how he'd lost sight of where he was going and tried to really be dramatic about this thing. And Teddy was okay. Cameron Grimes, you could tell that somebody had told him to say all this shit. And as I mentioned on the drive-through, Cameron Grimes is a gimmick. His personality and the way he works and the way he looks, he is a gimmick. So you don't gimmick him, because then it's a hat on a hat. And this is, and then they both said to the moon, and fake money fell from the sky so the people could snatch it, but it had Cameron Grimes' face on it, so then they'd throw it back down. And Ted DiBiase laughed, the $1 Million Man laugh, and that was the opening segment. At least they don't have opposition on the other channel anymore.
Was anything said during the opening segment about Cole or any of the things from the previous night that you'd kind of... I mean, that's what I would have tuned in for. I want to see, is Adam Cole going to be there? Is he gone? Is it a goodbye speech? Anything?
No, they had a recap package of what happened at the pay-per-view, but no, there was no, because Adam Cole wasn't there. So therefore there was a recap of the pay-per-view as they usually do, and then there was not a lot of talk of Adam Cole. And honestly, if they said anything in some of the commentary on some of these matches, I doubt they did, but I wouldn't have heard it anyway. Ridge Holland is back. Remember, he's the guy that caught somebody doing a crossbody and just broke his leg just horribly right there and went down right there, and was like a year ago, and was boom, he was done.
Wasn't he going to be tied into the whole, I mean, geez, it's hard to remember what exactly they were going to do. The thing with McAfee, where McAfee had Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch.
Yeah, well, now Pete Dunne has Oney Lorcan, and Oney Lorcan. Is Oney Lorcan, or is he just creeping? Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch, and God damn it. Anyway, we hadn't seen any of Ridge Holland really, or very little, but it seemed like he's an impressive physical specimen. Well, now, I don't know what his background is. Has he ever been a wrestler before, or did they train him from scratch? He's got very little experience, I hope, because the only way... He had a match with Timothy Thatcher, and physically, Ridge Holland looks great. He's got a lot of potential, but he's stiff of movement. He needs to loosen up and flow. He's very green. He needed it kept basic. He needs work on his kicks and strikes. I mean, I like Timothy Thatcher, and he was trying here, but about 5 minutes in, this was boring because it was so basic, and it kind of lost me. And Holland basically won with a power slam, 1, 2, 3. If that tells you how basic they needed to keep it, and there's nothing wrong with basic, but he's being pushed as one of the centerpieces of this thing with Burch and Lorcan and Pete Dunne. And there's, as Frank Spaceman Hickey would say, green as a pepper tree. But Champa and Dunne got in a fight that was better than this entire match that lasted 30 seconds. And then Burch and Lorcan jumped in and jumped Champa and beat up Thatcher too. And it's kind of awkward and it's a little flat. But
you think Champa has a future there? Because he's a guy that signed, I believe I heard he didn't want to go to the main roster. It was only for NXT.
Well, yes, and I believe the reason for that is not only because he could do more, he could wrestle fewer matches and keep more, time on his career because he's already had the major injuries. He's had a major neck deal done. He's had major knee surgeries. He looks in such tremendous condition because he's such a beast, but he's had a number of injuries. I think he liked, working the NXT guys and working that schedule. And that's what and I don't know why that you would get rid of him from anything, because he's been one of the highlights. If that's where, he needs to be to elongate his career. Although now he did that back when they actually went on the road with the full-time roster or the main roster and 4 and 5 nights a week or whatever. Maybe things have changed, but no. And Ciampa's not that big, but he looks big and he works big because he's a badass in appearance, right? So I would hope to fuck that they would have a place for him anywhere. The finals of the Breakout tournament was on this show, and we got clips of interviews from the two finalists, Odyssey Jones and Carmelo Hayes. And remember I said when they came down to this, why are they having Odyssey Jones face another babyface in the finals? And I say that again, Carmelo Hayes did a sit down with some new announcer who's prepared questions, but he's a big babyface. He's well-spoken, but it's nothing exciting. It's just he's a well-spoken guy that's happy to be there and determined, right? But this is obviously a babyface match. They VTR'd the proposal between Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis, and now they did a promo they did an interview with Indy because Lumis doesn't speak. He stands there blankly looking because he's Michael Myers, right? So this girl is talking in front of him about how they're in love, and the wedding is going to be September 14th, and she and the announcer do some bad comedy. And he pulled out the wedding invitation because he can't speak. So now he's Harpo Marx with, fucking visual aids. And, and then they came back to the announcers, and Beth Phoenix had to act excited over this tripe. Like, oh, I've got so many things to do. So they're killing her credit because she's been so far probably the best female announcer, not ring announcer, but commentator that I've heard so far. But now they got her doing it. It's just bad comedy. Then they followed that, the big wedding announcement. They followed the big wedding announcement with a girls tag team match. Caden Carter and Casey Cartanzero against Gigi Dolan, and it's either JC Jane or Jane Wayne Gacy or something like that.
How do you confuse those two? It's either JC Jane or Jane Wayne Gacy.
Jane Wayne Gacy, I don't know. So they went from the wedding proposal to the wedding talk to a girls tag team match, which I skipped, to an interview with some more girls, which I skipped, to a highlight video of some more girls, which I skipped. Is this the LPWA, for fuck's sake? It was great when there was one wrestling program that was all girls, when there was 30 different other wrestling programs that was all guys. And then they did an Odyssey Jones sit down, who's a huge baby face. Why is he facing Carmelo Hayes? And then, after that little sit down, they introduced some Brazilian girl. I swear, they said she's from Brazil. I'm not making this up. Some Brazilian girl. I couldn't understand the ring announcer pronouncing this name. She was wearing a Carmen Miranda headdress. Look that up. Google it, folks. And she's got a match against Kaylee Ray. So say there was like a fucking, the middle hour was the girls, all the girls. I don't know what happened. You probably gathered that.
What if that's the revamp? NXT's just a girls promotion.
That could be a boy. I'll tell you, you've hit on something here. Anyway.
With that logo.
Oh my God. Finally, Samoa Joe, the new NXT champion, comes to the ring. And he did an in-ring interview. And as usual, it's a grown man speaking with some conviction. And he wants to know who's going to be next to challenge. He knows he did a very good promo about how everybody looked at him a little bit differently now that he's the champion. He recognizes it from before. And everybody's dealing with him a little bit differently because everybody wants him. So who's it going to be? The time is now. Guess whose music played? Pete Dunne. Go, Joy.
Pete Dunne to challenge Samoa Joe?
Well, he comes out, and they have a little stare down, and then Pete Dunne starts speaking, and next to Samoa Joe, he sounds like the drummer from Herman's Hermits. It's almost, I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself and the group. So he says a little something, and then LA Knight's music, and here he comes out. Thank God. Picked up the energy level and cut a promo that was a big line of bullshit, heel bullshit, and it was more fun than listening to Pete Dunne. And then here comes Kyle O'Reilly. And he geared it back on the energy level because you can't beat LA Knight for that, but he had some good material with a couple of zingers on all the other people, and he calls LA Knight La. I just got a kick out of that for some reason. But he respects Samoa Joe, and as soon as he said he respected Samoa Joe, Ridge Holland came out and just knocked Kyle O'Reilly ass over tea kettle from behind. And then Champa hit the ring and tackled Pete Dunne, and then Holland hit Champa, and then Joe dumped La, and it just became a mess. But out of all of these guys, they've given which LA Knight's good, Kyle O'Reilly's good. You know what I think of Samoa Joe? They have given Ridge Holland the biggest push on this program, and he's one that deserves it the least. So then they transmogrified to out back in the parking lot, where Cameron Grimes had second thoughts about having the $1 million belt. Ted's in the limo with the window down, and Cameron Grimes said, no, I can't take this. I got to give it back to you. I don't deserve it. And he hands the belt in, right? And Teddy said, no. You deserve this. You've fought hard for it. You've worked for it. And he hands the belt back out, and Cameron Grimes takes it and said, wait a minute. This doesn't feel right. And he turns it over. It's a fucking replica belt. And Teddy laughs, and the limo drives off. He stole the belt back.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So then Kyle O'Reilly was in the back somewhere and about to be interviewed about what had just happened. And some guy with an English accent that I don't know that anybody ever said his name walked up, and they exchanged like 3 words, and Kyle slapped him, and they broke into a fucking pull apart in the hallway. So Kyle, it's not a good day for Kyle O'Reilly. And then they had the Breakout tournament final, where the winner will get a contract for a title match against any champion in NXT. Maybe even the girls. That would be fun. But it's Carmelo Hayes against Odyssey Jones. I've told them. Well, they listen, so I've told them, but I've told the people, Odyssey Jones is a star. He's 400 pounds. He can move around. He's got that jovial Mark Henry type smile that made Mark such a good baby face. Well, at least when they used him, at least when I used him right. His shit looks good for a guy with that little experience. He's apparently played in the NFL, so he's a high-level athlete, blah, 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 right? And I'm thinking, what are they doing? Why is this a babyface match? And I'm thinking, Carmelo Hayes, come on. But they started out doing good little man, big man stuff, and they took their time, and they built it. They didn't try to run off and leave the people, and you can tell, I don't know what Carmelo Hayes' background is. He obviously has been a wrestler. I don't know if he was somebody else in another life, in another company. They've changed his name, whatever, but he looks like he feels comfortable. He moves well in the ring. He seems to have experience, and he grew on me through this thing. At one point, in the first segment, Odyssey Jones gave just one big heel across the ring to Hayes, and he went as high as a backdrop, and it was all the way across the ring, and that established Odyssey Jones without him having to do a lot of shit. And they kept this moving. But Hayes did most of the moving, but it worked. In the second segment, as they were going home, there was a lot of stuff where Odyssey Jones had to stand there and get hit because he couldn't just take a bump on one thing, but he had to stagger a little bit and stand there to get hit a little too much. But he's got a great shoulder breaker. It may not feel great. It looked convincing. And then finally, Carmelo Hayes misses something off the top, and Odyssey Jones hits a fucking splash. Boom, looked like it killed him, and Carmelo Hayes rolled him, hooked the arm and the leg and rolled him over 1, 2, 3. Hayes won. And at first I was like, what the fuck? Because look at Odyssey Jones. And I'm thinking, well, it's actually too early for Odyssey Jones to get a shot at a title. He's still green, and if he gets one, he probably ought to win it. So I'd rather not see him lose a championship match at this point in time, and Hayes looks like the more polished worker. So, and he got the contract and did a nice babyface promo. And again, there's nothing to write home about his promos. He doesn't have star written all over him, but he's accomplished, and so this wasn't that bad as I saw it. Who would Carmelo Hayes have been if he was a wrestler somewhere else?
I just looked him up, and it appears he was just an indie guy in the Northeast.
What was his name?
Hold on. I actually closed it before I saw what his name was.
Well,
and then I misspelled the name Carmelo in the Google machine. There we go. Carmelo Hayes, a professional wrestler, wrestled as Christian Casanova. For Beyond Wrestling and for Chaotic Wrestling, as well as Northeast Championship Wrestling, otherwise known as NCW. Also, Limitless Wrestling, Lucky Pro Wrestling. What the hell is Lucky Pro Wrestling? And a return to Northeast Wrestling shortly before. In February, he signed with WWE and was sent to the Performance Center, where he was rebranded Carmelo Hayes.
And that was what date? When?
February 12th, 2021.
Okay, so just earlier. Okay. Well, Larry, I mean, he's got some experience and he seems to be pretty good. I like Carmelo Hayes better than Christian Casanova, which sounds like every other indie guy's name for the last 20 years. And, they wouldn't want a Christian on their show at this point. See what I did there with that play on words. I know that Christian is not his Christian name.
The Young Bucks would like more Christians on their show.
Because they're Christian as fuck. Boy, they certainly are. Anyway.
Except when it comes to forgiveness. And then they're not so Christian.
No forgiveness. They certainly forget about people. Look at FTR. Everybody's forgotten about them.
That's right.
But they never forgive. Anyway, the rest of this program real quickly. Boa. Remember Boa? He's the...
Yeah, he was with Xia Li.
Yes, and they're under the spell or the yoke of slavery of this mysterious woman on the throne at the entranceway.
I don't think I ever saw the revelation of who was the boss. Remember, I just saw the old man that was torturing them with the camera crew for weeks.
Well, no, there's some old woman, but it's still, you can't see you got to go and look at it. But it's on the throne on the stage. So Boa takes on this job guy that's already in the ring. And the fucking job guy beats Boa 1, 2, 3 with just one single move that he hit. And then he rolls out of the ring and starts to go up the ramp, but he realizes that the old mysterious woman on the throne is up there, and he just beat Boa, but he's scared of her, so he hops over the rail and runs through the people. And apparently Mei Ying is the old woman's name. And we're supposed to believe, I guess, that Mei Ying is not going to be too happy about these developments. And then William Regal did a promo with Johnny Sameface. When do they release him? The poster boy for any heat that NXT would have with Vince McMahon.
He's safe. His wife got pregnant.
Well, good. Then he needs more time at home. And lastly, Hit Row had a 6-man tag with the Lucha suits, and that was the main event. So that was NXT. Woo.
I did see clips of a Lucha Suits interview. It may have been during TakeOver. I don't know how tall they are or how short they are, but I swear to God, the cameraman must have been laying down. It was shot from so far below them that it made them look gigantic.
Well, that's because they had to figure out something to do with all these small guys that they're giving notice to, so they made them cameramen, and they're only 4'7". So. But anyway, you know what? I will say that NXT, and if it gets any worse from here, boy, howdy. But the one thing about NXT is after I watched this, Brian, I got a good night's sleep.
Well, you know, Jim, a lot of people fall asleep during NXT.
Well, I fell asleep right afterwards, actually during that main event, but it was courtesy, not of rather the boringness of NXT, but it was courtesy of my incredible Helix mattress. We've talked about the Helix mattresses that we're all obsessed with here on the program, but now we've recently broken the news. And when news breaks, we fix it, folks, that Helix has left the bedroom. Well, no, they haven't. They still make mattresses. But they've now entered your living room and living areas, and they've started making sofas. The new company, Helix Allform, and they're making the best sofas in the game. For one thing, you pick your fabric. It's spill, stain, and scratch resistant. You pick the color. You pick the color of the legs, the sofa size, the shape, and you make sure that it's perfect for you and your home. But if you move, if you change homes, you can add to it because they've got armchairs and love seats all the way to an 8-seat sectional, and you can start small and buy more seats later on because these things fasten together. It's delivered directly to your home with fast, free shipping. And right now, if you buy a sofa the regular way, if you get it within months, you need somebody to carry it in and assemble it and all that stuff. Allform, you get a few weeks in the mail. You can assemble it yourself with no tools needed. Assembly is even fun for the whole family. I mean, you had your kids do it, and they didn't even need the power tools that you normally have them use.
No. I did it with the kids as a fun family exercise where we can show, like, Swiss Family Robinson style, how to build a couch, how to put it together, a sofa with a chase.
You were doing a lot of pointing and telling.
Well, my back was out, but I was still involved with the process. It's not like they did everything. You need a foreman.
Well, that's true. But kids can do this, folks. And if getting a sofa without trying it in the store sounds risky, there's no worries because you get 100 days to decide if you want to keep it. In some countries, that's more than 3 months, 100 days. And if you don't love it, they'll pick it up for free and give you a refund. Exclusive discounts for teachers, students, military and first responders, financing and flexible payment plans. I said it this week. Flexible payment plans. So a forever warranty, literally forever and ever until the end of time. And now I'm praying for the end of time to hurry up and arrive. Because if I got to sit another minute on you, No, get rid of your old sofa and get a new Helix Allform sofa that you will want to sit on forever and ever until the end of time. And if you go to allform.com, that's ALLFORM.com/JCE, you'll get 20% off all orders for our listeners only. Allform.com/JCE. These sofas are so fucking great. You will so fucking love them.
And that wasn't in the copy either.
Well, sometimes I get excited.
All
right. You have various programs in between the feedings. You have some programs you're working on for this week in the fine Arcadian Vanguard universe.
Another action-packed week. Let's do this quickly. I am tired, but of course, get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few quick notes. We mentioned the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast Don Kernoodle tribute shows. There were 2 parts. Well, Mike Sempervive has now combined them into one special episode, an unabridged Don Kernoodle tribute show, available right now at midatlanticpod.com or for the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Also want to make mention of the latest episode of Charting the Territories with Al Getz and John Boucher. This week discussing more from Mid-South and Leroy McGurk, 1977, 1964, as well as part 2 of Al's interview with former Mississippi promoter Gil Culkin. Hear it today at chartingthepodcast.com or look for Charting the Territories wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! Been hearing lots of that, ladies and gentlemen.
That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
The show, 1 week behind schedule because of some things that were going on. But stay tuned, we are just about done, and a lot of people are going to be interested to hear a lot of the things on this show. A lot of people, from what I understand, are eagerly waiting to hear what I'm going to say on this show about various things. But go through the archives today at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. The Mothership!
There'll be some pithy comments like Nick Khan gives in these interviews when he gives these pithy comments.
I don't really do pithy. I just do brutal honesty. Here's the truth. If you don't like it, I don't care. If you think I'm an asshole, I don't care, but I'm going to tell you the truth.
So you don't do pithy. You just take the pith out.
I take the pith out.
Take the pith out. Okay, I guess the time has arrived. We should go over the 2 AEW offerings for this past week. Dynamite on August 25th and Rampage on August 27th. And boy, what a difference a week makes. But on Dynamite, as soon as they open up, there's Punk signs all over. He has taken this thing over in one appearance, right? He is the star of this show, of this promotion. I don't think anybody can argue that at this point. And it reminded me of when they started bringing the Austin signs. You know, imagine when Danielson shows up. Imagine if Wyatt shows up and Cole and Flair, for fuck's sake. You won't be able to see the people for the signs. They finally got something sign-worthy. I've heard of being sponge-worthy, but never sign-worthy. So the opening match on this program was Matt Hardy versus Pockets. This is how they opened the show. What has happened in Matt Hardy's life? He was a star. He had a great career. And now he's been relegated to dignifying a fucking mascot just because the boss thinks that the guy's funny. And again, they have a show now with CM Punk on it. And they put this on first to run people off and make the whole thing look like a rib. So anyway, obviously I'm not going to watch this, but apparently at some point in this, the mascot dove off the top rope and cross-bodied Matt Hardy's face. And if it didn't break his nose, it at least flattened it or spread it all over his face. There was blood everywhere. I mean, blood. And I'm a person who's had nosebleeds all my life. This was a healthy nosebleed. And then to add insult to injury, literally no exaggeration, to add insult to injury, Pockets pinned Matt Hardy on national television with his hands in his pockets. Are they trying to kill Matt Hardy both physically and professionally? They've given him brain damage. They've mashed his face. They have. What was that other thing they did to him a while back where it almost looked like it killed him? Did you
Sammy
watch
Guevara
this?
threw the chair at his head.
Yes, and caved his face in there. They are trying to, Matt Hardy, you know what? This is Booker of the Year. Here's you another idea. Matt Hardy's next manager needs to be a plastic surgeon. What the fuck? He can't touch any of these motherfuckers without them hurting him in some fashion. And then he's still got to put him over. Matt Hardy. Let me just register that again and you can give your thoughts. Matt Hardy got pinned by a joke mascot on national TV while a guy had his hands in his pockets.
My comments are that Matt Hardy in 2021 is a joke mascot on TV. It was 2 joke mascots against each other. One being completely a joke, the other one being the shell of a former wrestling star. I came into this with a lot of enthusiasm coming off Punk's debut. What are they going to do? There's more people coming. If you're going to have this match, I wish you wouldn't have started the show with it. Put it in the middle when I go to the bathroom.
Yeah, but just put it in the middle, don't let this be the first thing. If they did get any new viewers with the happenings over the last week, this is the first thing you want those people to see. Anyway, Malachi Black did a pre-tape, and he is really well-spoken and spooky-looking. Which is about all I can say about that because it was short. Jericho got in the ring for a promo about last week's loss to MJF. He's 0 for 3 against MJF, and it's driving him crazy. And he said, until this ends, I'm like, my God, I thought it had. Wasn't that the idea?
Several times.
Several times. But apparently, no, it is not. He's not going to put MJF. The one saving grace of those 4 or 5 weeks of lousy, self-indulgent matches, including with the bank-addicted drug robber and all the other people that Jericho had to beat on his way to climb this mountain, I thought the end result, okay, MJF, the new heel, the hot young commodity, got over on the old veteran. That's the, kind of the way you pass the torch type of thing. But no, he's got another proposal, does Chris Jericho, on how to end this once and for all, which once and for all is code for when I go over. One more match at All Out. If Jericho loses, he will, and I swear to God, he said this. If Jericho loses, he will never wrestle in AEW again. He said, I'll go do color on Rampage. I may show up on Dynamite, but I won't wrestle. He can't even say I'll leave AEW. I'll switch positions. Maybe people might buy that that's going to happen, but no, they're not going to buy that that's going to happen. But have you ever heard of not a loser leave town, but loser has to get out of the ring and go to color match?
It doesn't surprise me that it would be a part of this feud, which has seen so many wrestling firsts, like going from the end to the beginning. I'm exhausted with this whole thing. And I've gone back and forth with being frustrated with MJF to feeling really bad for MJF.
Yeah.
And, the only feud I want to see Chris Jericho in is one with him against, I don't know, laryngitis. Just something that causes him to stop.
How about him versus Carbs?
I think he's already in the middle of that feud. But
he's losing.
Whatever gets him off this show and off commentary on the other show. Well, but I feel like a fool. Last week I said to you, when MJF beat Jericho, this has to be it. That has to be the end. Now Jericho can go on tour. He can go do another COVID cruise, do whatever he wants. Disappear for a while the bigger stars start to arrive.
He put MJF over. It was all part of a plan to get heat on this young kid.
If MJF's has he had a pinfall loss in AEW?
I do not think so. I'm afraid we're about to see it.
That is bullshit. If the first pinfall loss is the or submission, even worse, is the Jericho, that's bullshit.
Do you think there's a chance? Do you think there's a chance that he really is going to retire and do color? They've already got 18 commentators.
Only if in the last few months he has sobered up and watched his work.
Ooh.
Otherwise,
wait a minute. Hold on.
I don't think so.
Hold on. Yeah, there you go. Anyway.
Is that what he sounded like, or is that...
That's what you just hit him over the head with, that truncheon. But in this interview, MJF came out, and MJF's promo was a little better, picked up things a little bit. Of course, it's because you wrote it primarily. MJF came out and said what you said 2 weeks ago. Jericho, you needed a rub from me. You latched onto me, the hot young commodity. But he accepted the match to get the chance to end Jericho's career and left Jericho standing speechless for once. I don't know if maybe he will put MJF over. Maybe we're roasting this man down the garden path prematurely, but we'll see.
Even if he does, this whole feud, everything here, we said it before, this whole thing was a major disservice to MJF. Does anyone, of all the fucking goofy factions in AEW, does anyone take MJF seriously? Does anyone take MJF as seriously as they used to? Jericho, at least with Orange Cassidy, Jericho said, there's something happening here. I need to be a part of this. And then it ended after a few months. This is over a year he dragged this kid's career down.
Well, and also the point of the whole thing, when was the last time that MJF wrestled on television and beat someone until he beat Chris Jericho. You don't get somebody over by just beating a star once when you haven't wrestled on the show in the previous 4 fucking months in a straight single match just against anybody. That's what they've mismanaged MJF from the start. Not only he had his persona at the beginning. You couldn't see through it. He wasn't going to break the gimmick. He was a fucking heel. That's what everybody liked about it. Plus his promos were fresh and verbally fantastic. And he can work in the ring. He just doesn't do all that flippy shit, which is great because everybody else does it, and you don't need to do that to begin with. However, he would get promos, but he would never beat anyone. Very early in the show, I remember, in the series rather, I remember him getting a few wins against Joe Schmuck to get the pile driver thing that he does when the guy's leaning through the ropes and he kind of face plants him. The old Cyclone Negro fucking forward thing that Triple H stole and made a pedigree. He does that kind of thing. He did it to Jericho, but since it's been a year since they let him do it to anybody on TV, nobody even reacted. It wasn't MJF doesn't have any finishes besides the armbar. And the only way that he ever beats anybody with the armbar is when it's gimmicked. Somebody else has done something or it's a bad arm or whatever. They have let this guy talk, but they've never shown him being responsible or credible or competent in the ring. And then his group was immediately made incompetent and he got his head flushed in the toilet and blah, blah, blah. So now he's just a person that comes out and annoys people verbally until somebody kicks the shit out of him.
And again, we'll see what happens. But if we come out of this on the other end saying Jericho took MJF and said, this is going to be the guy, I'm going to be the first person to beat him. I'm going to get my Stadium Stampede win back over him and his people. I mean, his whole feud, the War Games, he got thrown off the roof of the War Games. He had to go through all the labors. Then he lost. Then he gets another match? Why? What have you done to get another match? This is the worst feud. The worst goddamn feud. And what the hell are they going to do with MJF after this? The only thing I can hope for is someone like Danielson. Probably won't be Punk right now, but just one of those guys has seen him and says, I want to work with that guy. Get him away from all your guys. I want to work with him.
Well, here's the thing. Danielson is not going to I'm not going to put words in Brian's mouth, but I don't think that MJF is his dream opponent because MJF doesn't do all that shit that they'd like to do. I'd think that Punk would probably stay away from MJF at this point because Jericho's hogged him to fucking death and it hasn't been particularly beneficial to MJF. So maybe, good Lord, maybe Flair. Maybe Flair could come in and work with him and get him over. Flair's probably the only one of this group that wants to fucking do a job. Anyway, the Varsity Blondes and Julia Hart look great together. What white meat baby faces. Why do they let Griff Garrison talk? Even though he went first in their little pre-taped interview, it monotone delivery and not really genuine. And then Brian Pillman speaks and saves it and jumps in with a little more fire and a little more passion. But then they send him out against the Lucha Brothers. And again, this was one of the tag team tournament matches to find out who's going to face the Hardley Boys in the cage at the pay-per-view and etc. I like the Varsity Blondes. They're a good, right now, middle card tag team that then they should actually probably already have started breaking Brian Pillman off as a single and moving him up because of the dark side of the ring, but they lost that opportunity because they weren't smart enough to capitalize on it. So I like the Varsity Blondes, but this match, I was pretty sure was going to and did look like a first-round audition on America's Got Talent with one of the gymnastics acts. And so it was what it was. And guess who they beat? Brian effing Pillman Jr. When was the last time somebody pinned Griff Garrison that looks like a Q-tip with arms and legs?
I don't know, but I feel like I've seen Pillman Jr. lose several times.
Every time. Remember, sometimes they get the heat on him, give Griff the tag for the comeback, and then tag Brian back in and beat him again. It's fucking, So then, after they beat the Varsity Blondes, the Lucha Brothers had a face-off with Jungle Boy and Dino Douche and Dwarf Dongsucker because they're the final match on Friday on Rampage. So you've just had two babyface tag teams face each other with the winner to face another babyface tag team. So this is just goofiness. And then the Hardley Boys had been out there watching the match, and they jump in the ring as the Lucha Brothers are having a face-off with Jungle Boy and Dino Douche, and they shove Jungle Boy and Dino Douche from behind into the Lucha Brothers so that they'll start shoving each other, and then the heels dive out now that they've stirred that up. And I guess so now the Lucha Brothers, at least this week, are being portrayed as full-fledged baby faces, even though they're 2/3 of a group called Death Triangle. And they've got a heel English language interpreter, but everybody's a baby face so that the Hardley Boys have more attention as being the only heels, because we know that this entire tag team division is to give these children from Cucamonga who were ignored or not given enough affection as children, they can get all the fucking attention. What'd you think of that match, if anything?
Not much to add. I hate the tag team division and the way it's booked. I like some of the tag teams. Like even the Lucha Brothers, ever since they added Alex, I like them. And I think if they weren't in the mix of all this other stupidity, I'd like them more. But I think the Varsity Blondes have talent. I don't know exactly what they're supposed to be. The Varsity Blondes, have any of them gone to college? Let me start with that question. I don't know, so I'm not like attacking anyone. Have any of them gone to college?
I don't know if Julia Hart's old enough yet, but she makes a good-looking cheerleader.
So there are a bunch of people in their 20s, and Julia Hart actually is probably younger than that, acting like they're high school athletes. I don't know. The gimmick itself, I don't like. I think Pillman Jr. has a world of potential on the mic and in the ring. Griff Garrison, time will tell. But I hate the Young Bucks booking of their tag team division. I hate the silliness and the stupidity. And I'll be honest, after Rampage, and this is a weird thing to say, the stupidity bothers me more with the Bucks than it does with Omega. And even when they use the same idiots in their skits, with the Bucks, there's something that's just so cringy and lame about it.
I will acquiesce to the statement that you just made. Yes, I will concur that the Bucks have made a bigger mess out of the tag team division than Twinkle Toes has about the title picture.
That wasn't exactly what I said, but I agree with you 100% on that. And there's nothing else to add. I mean,
and I agree with you too. I like the Lucha Brothers with when Alex is with them, because that's in an interview when he's interpreting. I just don't want to see them wrestle. I just rather see them interpreted verbally a lot.
And here's the other thing. Now it's multiple matches leading up to this cage match for no good reason on the pay-per-view, where the Young Bucks at the beginning of the match have to come out, get their entrance, do their little acting, sit at the top of the stage. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. And sometimes I don't pick up the crowd reactions as well because I'm not there. It doesn't seem like the crowd's reacting to them the way they used to in the middle of this, what seems like a mid-card tag team division.
Well, when you see somebody on a television show for 30 minutes every week, familiarity breeds contempt. But anyway, speaking of contempt, Jamie Hayter was up next. How was that segue? A contemptuous person who has hate for everyone. Jamie Hayter versus Red Velvet. And Red Velvet is the babyface that teamed up with Cody in the match with Shaq, and she's from your mama's kitchen, so you know she's got to be a nice girl. And she only weighs about 100 pounds. She's a little short little thing, and Jamie Hayter is bigger and obviously a heel. So what do? They have Dr. Britt Baker and Reba in Jamie Hayter's corner. The most popular woman on their roster that people have been basically cheering and carrying out of the building on her shoulders the past couple of weeks is now in the corner of the heel. It's going to beat up Red Velvet. And she was the surprise return when she returned last week on the program and jumped in the ring in plain clothes, and it was a big deal. And we're like, who the fuck is that? This was her. And I wasn't going to watch this match, but within the first 30 seconds, I was hooked. Because Red Velvet started at 100 miles an hour. She actually missed a drop kick Not like the missed dropkick spot, but like she went to dropkick this girl and came a foot short and just fell in front of this girl. And then Jamie Hayter just wandered around and did shit. You can tell she's been a wrestler for a while, but there weren't facials. There wasn't personality. It was just like she does moves. Red Velvet at one point did 2 dives in a row through the ropes, cross-bodied Jamie Hayter on the floor and just flattened her. And it looked stiff. And then she rolled in. After the first one, rolled in, hit the ropes. Jamie Hayter stands up. And she does the same thing, and it looks stiff too. I'm like, they needed 2, the exact same thing in a row when they both looked convincing. And this went to a break. Did you hear excrement? Old Sockface pitched to the picture-in-picture too early, and they hadn't done the heat spot yet. So they had to stay and he tried to jump back in for commentary, but somebody said no in the truck, just leave it. And they posted Red Velvet. She took a heck of a post. And then Reba and Britt Baker are getting on her. So now I guess Britt's only a babyface in Pittsburgh. I know she's Britt Baker is a babyface because she's been a heel and she's been an entertaining heel. But once you get to that level of people cheering you, be a heel in your promos, be a heel in your matches. But it's a little distasteful when you're at ringside 2 and 3 on oneing another babyface for no reason, particularly. Anyway, Red Velvet's comeback, I swear to God, was so awkward that it looked like they just quit cooperating with each other and were just shoving each other around. And then Red Velvet went for the standing moonsault and went completely over and past Jamie Hayter and landed on her face to the point where she sold it.
She had to.
Jamie Hayter just sat up and like, oh, you missed me. And then Hayter hit her with a Hayter hitter. That ought to be the name of her finish. The Hayter hitter. Hayter hitter with a lariat. Boom. 1, 2, 3. And then Britt Baker and Reba jump in and start getting heat again. And Chris Statlander, dressed like she'd just been out camping in a tent, hits the ring and made the save, and the heels powdered. So obviously all of this was meant to go somewhere. You understand where, right?
No, not really. I like Red Velvet. She has so much energy, and you can tell she really tries hard. She should never do that standing moonsault again. She has hit it maybe 2 out of 20 times. Jamie Hayter has size and some presence. I don't think Britt Baker really needed her. And that's all I have to say about this.
Well, now there's trouble in the Dark Order. Did you hear about this? You read about this?
I saw this.
What were they arguing about? Because I don't know who okay, they're doing a pre-tape in the back. Pizzeria Uno is talking about how sorry he is that he did something. And one of the clowns, what was the clown's name that was arguing with him? That was just
Reynolds.
Reynolds. Is that Reynolds?
I think that's Alex Reynolds.
Has he ever spoken before in public? It was like he was reading a cue card. I would like to have a sandwich. That was the emotion he had in that. So now the Dork Order is arguing with each other. So maybe we'll see a big breakup down the line.
Or maybe a cult leader, maybe potentially the Cult of Wyndham leader, comes in and reunites the Dark Order.
They're going to change his name. They can't call him Wyndham. They'll change it to Windjammer. Bray Windjammer. You know what a windjammer is, Brian?
What's a windjammer, Jim?
The agonizing scream of a trapped turd.
Is that a Boyd Pierce joke?
No, that's an Al Costello joke.
Okay.
One time he was doing an interview with Lance Russell at like the Coliseum in 1977. And they saved this as one of the bloopers because Lance got so tickled by it. He was starting to blow a promo, so he just turned to Lance and he said, Lance, do you know what a windjammer is? What's that, Al? The agonizing screams of a trapped turd. And Lance's reaction made it funny. Anyway, well, we're an hour into this program, and for once, they do something perfectly. Because at the top of the hour, right at 9 o'clock, when people are going to be switching around looking for something to watch, here comes CM Punk. With Tony Schiavone in the ring. Big chants, big pops. He's over. The people like him. Tony Schiavone was wearing fluorescent orchid-colored pants. I don't know why. Maybe there were pajamas. Did they wake Tony up? Did he walk away from a state home? It was a little distracting, but nevertheless, suddenly the show turns big time. A guy that's over, that you recognize, that comes out and has the ability to speak and is interviewed by an announcer without a sock on his head. It was the second show in a row he had a great opening line because they're chanting so loud for him. Tony asks him the question, and he says, "I can't hear you, Tony." And he gets a laugh from the people. It seems like he's having fun, but at the same time, he's relaxed. He's got a message to deliver. He was actually being interviewed by Tony Schiavone, who held the microphone the whole way, because the athlete is being interviewed by the announcer. And Tony got to ask a couple of questions, and Punk retired the voice of the voiceless because this place has a voice. Classic babyface material. And then he mentioned that he wondered if he could still go like these young guys. Darby Allin in particular. He put Darby Allin over. If I was 15 years old, he'd be the guy that'd be my favorite wrestler. This is obviously Punk's material, speaking from the heart about what he wants to say. And yes, there's an element of working in it because he's selling a match, but you can't tell the difference between what his real feelings are and what he's saying on television, which is the fucking point. Some of it he means both. Some of it he means one way. Some of it he means the other, but which and what is it? Anyway, did you like it when the people started chanting yes? And he said, hey, that's somebody else's deal. You're going to have to be a little more patient. Big pop there didn't throw him off.
He played it off perfectly.
Played it perfectly. Then he plugged the pay-per-view and said hello to his wife. Great fucking the only thing he did that I couldn't believe he did, and I wouldn't have done, he went around the front row hugging and slapping hands. In a pandemic. He must be convinced of his immune system. But otherwise than that, this could have been on Raw back when Raw was good. This could have been on any wrestling program anywhere. It would have worked. And he's run off with this thing in a week. Anyway, what'd you think?
It's the highlight of the show. It's a star coming out there and delivering something and not leaving you disappointed. And in a very short period of time, I went from never thinking about this potential match to being intrigued by seeing him against Darby. Because obviously it means something to him. He picked Darby for his first opponent. We've heard the reason. Some of it's kayfabe, some of it's legit. If I was a kid, I'd like Darby. I'm really interested in that match. CM Punk's first match back in all these years against Darby Allin. The one guy who, you have to say, he's not a big guy. He lays everything in. Everything with him looks good. He's serious in his role. I don't know how much of that's real life. But everything with Punk so far,
with somebody leading him and making sure that he doesn't do anything just crazy psychologically. He's tremendous. And a lot of people said, well, I'm not excited by this being Punk's first match. Could have been Punk and Danielson or Punk and Twinkle Toes or whatever. It's a long-term deal. We don't know what the term, but they've said long-term. He's here. He's back. He's not going anywhere. So you don't need to rush the dream matches. When Vince signs Brock and he's going to get X million dollars per match, and for 3 matches in 12 months, you've got to hit the fucking high spots. You got to play the hits there. But if Punk's going to be around, he can start out with this and guess what? Actually get some fucking victories so that he qualifies for championship matches or main events or whatever the fuck. Now, if Darby Allin wins this, that's a drastic mistake of doing that too soon. If he's going to be around for a while, Punk, he's got plenty of time to make people, not in his first match. but he'll make Darby Allin look probably better than anybody else has. And because there'll be so much interest in the match, people will be paying more attention to Darby Allin. And that's the point. It's not just whether you win, it's who puts you over and how.
I wouldn't be surprised if something happens where maybe coming out of the match they are kind of aligned together, because I can't see Punk fighting with Sting right now. And
I would sincerely hope that CM Punk would know that there should be no fisticuffs between him and Sting.
Yeah, and obviously it would be the stupidest thing ever to turn him heel right now with all of this love going on. Maybe he comes out of the match and, there's a couple of heels or a heel that singles out Punk, and then all of a sudden you have Punk and Darby aligned. But let me ask you this, because I was wondering about it. We talked about the paternity end of it, or the paternity leave end of it. Adam Page not winning the title from Omega at All Out like so many people assumed was going to happen. Does it make a little more sense now? Does it make it a little more palatable? The idea that, do you want to have that match where Omega finally loses the title to Adam Page on the same show with the Punk debut?
Well, I mean, we're making a leap there. We know that the match was originally intended to be on the pay-per-view. I think everybody's admitted that, and that was changed. We don't know what the result was going to be, whether he was actually going to win the title. I think it made him look like a spare prick at the wedding to just not get the match. And I don't know, obviously this was a booking decision for him not to get that match and not the paternity leave thing, because my God, one night on pay-per-view for a world title match, you can hop on a fucking plane and go somewhere and wrestle and come back to your, new baby. Well, you could do that, even, for heaven's sake. Of course, you wouldn't do a job for anybody. But the point is,
that's true.
Did they change the whole booking plan and take this match out because they didn't want Page to win the belt in that match? That I think it would have been better, because it's not like they don't do screwy finishes. I think it would have been better for him to have that match and be fucked in it, and then go back home to his paternity leave, and instead of just being laid out on TV, written out of that match, and who knows how long before he gets any rebuttal. That's just again another example of burying Adam Page, or demeaning him, or diminishing him, or whatever the fuck. Sooner or later, people get tired of somebody chasing something that they don't get, and they don't even get close to. So I think it would have been better if they'd have had that match, yes, and let fucking Twinkle Toes and his gang fuck Page, and maybe do an injury thing so that he can go home and be with his baby. But at least you've given him some reason besides he got his ass kicked on television. Last we saw him, and we haven't seen him again. So he took his ass kicking and went home. Punked out. No pun intended. I don't think that did Page any good. It just disappear after he got his ass handed to him. But I mean, it's not like any of these baby faces act like baby faces. It's not like any of these heels act like heels. So that's why we're in the position we're in. Speaking of which, the next match was Jon Moxley, Eddie Kingston, and Darby Allin with Sting in their corner against poor Ryan Nemeth, Cesar Romero, and J.D. Drake, the Wingmen. And J.D. Drake was dressed like Big Bubba Rogers, or Roadkill, for another generation. This is just a Mark booking, because you put three baby faces of yours together, even though they have no similarities and nothing bonding them, just to put them on the show. And obviously I fast forwarded this, although I did see during the speed search, because at least this wasn't on the cock. Moxley even goes to the floor with the job guys. And apparently Sting and Moxley and Kingston were in the crowd beating up the job guy heels in a fucking regular cold match, while Darby beat J.D. Drake. And then this Danny Garcia, my God, he's everywhere. He jumped Darby Allin and kicked the shit out of him. Who does Daniel Garcia have pictures of with a donkey in Tijuana?
Maybe it's a dog in England.
Yeah, the wanker? Hey, this, again, I'm not even knocking this guy, but we have had major wrestling stars turn up on this program in this promotion, and you see them once every 6 weeks. Christian Cage came into all the fanfare, had one big TV match, and then weeks afterwards, he's doing promos in the back for Jungle Boy. And I mentioned MJF. He's been on the program for 2 years. I don't think he's had 5, not even that many matches against guys just to put him over. Daniel Garcia, we've never heard of before in the wrestling business. And he suddenly appears, 3 weeks ago, and he's in multiple segments on every program where he just comes out and kicks the shit out of people. Look old Daniel Garcia up. Where the fuck did he come from? And does he know any donkeys in Tijuana? While you're looking him up, Officer Bar Brady did an interview with Ty Conti where the bunny came in and interrupted, and they did a horrible promo and then had a phony-looking girl fight in the back. Because we haven't had any of those fights in the back in, God, several segments. Anyway, FTR had a package. If this is indeed it, they still want Santana and Ortiz one more time. They got a whole minute on television between what they were allowed to say and the highlights of their shitty ring nearly ending Cash Wheeler's career. I think that Tony ought to keep an eye on this, because if you give these guys a whole 60 seconds on fucking TV every couple of weeks, that's just ridiculous. Nobody deserves that much TV time.
It appears that they're starting to cut the best promos of their career. So why not just clip them and show them in pieces so they make no sense?
Yeah, I'd love to see everything that they said, because they look like they meant what we did see. Oh, have you come up with anything on Daniel Garcia?
Nothing firm other than he's a wrestler and a college graduate from Buffalo, New York.
Well, you just asked if anybody graduated college. Maybe next week he'll be in the Varsity Blondes.
It's in his actual profile here. Wrestler, college graduate.
Does he have a Wikipedia?
He does not.
His name doesn't pop up on any results of any events.
All right, here he is.
Before 3 weeks ago.
He was born in 1998. His championships and accomplishments include the C4 Championship for Capital City Championship Combat, as well as the ESW Heavyweight Championship, Empire State Wrestling, and Limitless Wrestling. He was their world champion also. Trained by Pepper Parks. That's the Blade, I believe.
Oh, okay. Well, here you go. So he knows somebody.
And Buffalo. Isn't that where the Butcher and the Blade were from, upstate New York? But he's been good.
I think that's what the Butcher and the Blade were slaughtering, was Buffalo.
Time will tell, and he's skinny, and like you said, whether he's good or not, we've seen a whole lot of him in 2.0 the last few weeks. Time will tell. He hasn't done anything that bothered me yet, so I'm not going to complain.
No, I'm not even, that's why I said I'm not knocking him. I'm gobsmacked that we get these former mainstream television stars that come into big fanfare and they disappear, and all of a sudden this guy we've never heard of is in multiple segments on every show. And I'm like, what the fuck? Anyway, another in-ring interview with Tony Schiavone. This way, the exact opposite. They showed you what not to do. It was Twinkle Toes, Don Fallis, Michael Knock It to Fuck Off, and Brandon Cutlet. And immediately, Fallis grabbed the microphone, and Tony just turned around and left the ring. And Fallis spoke one sentence, and Christian came out to the stage. And again, I wrote, actually, we just discussed this, explain to me why they pulled this match away from Adam Page. And they showed some old video of Callis and Christian from the independents in Canada. And then Don Fallis likened himself to Bill Watts, Eddie Graham, Vern Gagne, and Vince McMahon, and Vince's name got a big boo. They were all out here a long time and said very little. And then the heels beat up Christian 4-on-1, and Kazarian hit to make the save, and the heels powdered. And that was supposed to be promoting their main event title match on the pay-per-view. What did I miss that would have made this interesting to a normal person?
However you wanted to do Christian versus Omega, whatever they're doing here isn't good. I can't understand this whole Christian Don Callis thing. He worked for him, he fired him, he held him back. He's a carny piece of shit. which is great because so much of the audience
now.
Yeah. Well, piece of shit is. No one knows what a carny is. Why is he even using that? But
well, it's working better than outwork everyone for Christian. Carney piece of shit gets a pop. When he said outwork everyone, they're like, okay.
It's weird that as Omega seems to be getting slightly more serious and looking slightly more serious, he's surrounded by more and more goofiness. Callis is complete comedy. You have fucking Lashley on Raw with MVP. You have Heyman on SmackDown with Roman Reigns. And then you have Callis with Omega. This seems a notch below. It seems like a comedy show and not a good one, especially with Nakazawa and Cutler. Again, keep that on your YouTube show. It just looks like amateur hour. This promo, they had an idea. I just don't think this was executed at all well. And this Christian Don Callis feud, who gives a shit? No one cares. No one even understands what they're talking about. No one who's watching the show knows who Tony Condello is.
Oh, no, and I forgot to mention Tony Condello, who I worked for in Winnipeg in 1987. He was the local promoter for a Crockett show. Famous Canadian promoter in the business to guys that grew up in the Canadian wrestling business on an independent level 25 years ago. But again, and you said nobody knows what a carny is. It doesn't matter because if you notice, the Bucks always say that. And that's a thing that Olivier says.
They say it about you, actually.
They say it about me because that's the way that they've learned a word that used to be used in wrestling. And now that's the way that the word that they apply to people who were good at their jobs in previous generations and actually convinced people that they were legitimate. That becomes a cuss word. Carny piece of shit. That's they don't care whether their fans understand that. Well, their fans understand this because their small group of fans that live in that elite comedy bubble, they get all this stuff. But everybody else is trying to watch this show is going, what? I don't understand. Which was followed up by the CEO of Moxley Plumbing doing another promo in the back about more Japanese guys that we don't care about and nobody knows. This time they couldn't get Tanahashi, so now it's Kojima, right? Go to the mall and scream Satoshi Kojima. Somebody will probably fucking come after you with a net, but nobody will know what you're talking about. And then the Gun Club as an excuse to promote the long-awaited singles confrontation between Paul White, the former Big Show, and QT Marshall. They had the Gun Club, Billy and Austin and Colton Gunn against Solo, Comarato, and QTO. And Paul White did color, and QT got small packaged in this match, by the way. He got beat. The guy that's wrestling Big Show in his first match back and first match in AEW just got small packaged by one of the Gun Boys. Show's gonna kill you. Did you want to say anything about that?
Big Show wasn't very impressive on commentary. And why is QT on TV? Why is this happening? And then he gets pinned. Who cares?
Dan Lambert was at a pre-taped with Scorpio Sky and the other Page. And they're shoehorning this now. I got to admit, I love his material. I came up with a lot of it, but he had some zingers in there too. This was entertaining and most of it was true. Because he's doing the deal about, these guys in AEW. It's a joke, silly comedy wrestling promotion. These guys couldn't whip anybody. But there's a chink in the armor here in that he's had to divulge that Scorpio Sky is a trained mixed martial artist and the other Page is a black belt in something, karate, kung fu, kabrick, kachair, kachain, as Junkyard Dog used to say. He's trying to make them out as shoot fighters. And, the other Page had the karate fight with himself on YouTube. So maybe he's got one victory at a karate match against himself. But, I mean, Lambert's entertaining as fuck. I don't know why do you think, are they letting him tell the truth? to paint him as a crazy person who doesn't know what he's talking about, so obviously he's telling the truth, but it can't be the truth because he's crazy? Do they think that will insulate them from these valid criticisms, or what's going on here with that?
I don't think there's really too much thought into it. I'm not that entertained by it. It just seems like a guy performing a role here, a guy that as soon as he's done is going to go give Tony a pat on the back. So I'm not really into it. And then if you were into it, and you like the idea...
Let's not malign Dan. I think he really does believe this shit. I think he's just a big wrestling fan and likes to be on... Well, I think he's really a big wrestling fan. He likes to be on television. He knows this shit's the truth. They don't mind him saying it. And he gets to be on the show.
And it's lame. It's so stupid. It's mid-card shit, and they bring this guy in. He's aligned with fucking mixed martial art fighters. So who does he manage? Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky? Who gives a shit? This is bad. Oh, we want someone who could be the Jim Cornette character who can come out here and say all these things. Great, let's get him. Let's put him in there with Lance Archer. Now let's put him in there with Ethan Page. Now who gives a shit?
Well, and the thing is, he brought Junior Dos Santos and Andre Arlovsky last week. Those two names in the sports world were bigger than anybody on the card, and all they did was stand there and listen to his promo.
And I guess because they had a great time.
Because they know not to get involved in this shit. One of these guys has probably hurt them by accident, cross-body their fucking face or something. Anyway, and the main event of this program was the long-awaited grudge match between Brock Anderson and Malachi Black, where Brock wanted to get even for his dad because Malachi Black had kicked shit out of Cody and Arn when he made his debut. Already, did you hear the weight they announced Malachi Black at?
No, actually, I missed that. What was it?
How much would you say from watching Malachi Black on this TV program, what would you say he weighs?
What would I say he weighs, or what would I announce he weighs?
Well, what would you think from looking at him? What do you think he weighs?
Oh, I'm going to be a little liberal here. It ain't going to be this now that you're asking me the question. What I would say if I was the ring announcer is weighing 220 pounds, Malachi Black.
Okay, they announced him at 219.
All right.
With those tattoos and shit, he looks bigger than that. He's one of those guys that doesn't look small. He looks bigger, and they announce it Pac. They announce Pac at like 185 pounds. If you don't see somebody standing next to him to find out that he's not tall enough to ride the Ferris wheel, he looks like he's 230. So I'm just saying, they could announce this guy as more of a grown man. 219 pounds. He looks big. He's got a wild-looking outfit. He's got a spooky entrance. We've said his promos are delivered well. I'm interested in this guy, and they haven't fucked him up so bad like some of these other guys they've debuted so far, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, obviously the whole story of this was Brock's in over his head. He's had 6 matches. They did say the guy's been wrestling for 19 years, and we saw what that did for Bronson Reed, so I wish they'd cut that out. The guy doesn't look like he's 40 years old. He's been a professional athlete for 20 years. But anyway.
That's why Excalibur wrestled him back in Germany 30 years ago.
Oh, God. But anyway, having said that, and we said before, Brock Anderson needs some upper body size. He needs to gain some weight, and most of it above the waist. He's got that facial expression that Arn gets on his face where he looks like he can look serious. But Malachi Black beat him up here, and that's what was supposed to happen. And Arn teased throwing in the towel, but he didn't want to do it because he knew his son wanted to do this. So Malachi Black hits the kick, 1, 2, 3, and then he and Arn face off. And I see what they went for here, but I don't think it came off right. Malachi Black goes for a kick, and Arn blocks the kick, so then Malachi just football kicks him in the balls and then does the head kick, and both the Andersons are laid out. Would you have established that kick can be blocked that easily, this early, and by a retired wrestler?
By Arn, yeah. To me, that's the issue. He just put his 2 hands up and blocked that kick. No way I do that. I save that for a moment where people see the kick block for the first time.
Yes, in a match where it means something where you think all is lost. Oh, he's going to hit the kick. Oh, he blocked it. Oh, my God. But we've established now the kick can be blocked. And obviously, Arn is more of a man than anybody else on the roster practically, but still, he's portrayed as a retired wrestler, which is what he is. And I would have portrayed first guy to block that kick to be a main event babyface, but that's just me. And that was Dynamite.
The problem is, if this leads to, in a few weeks, as the summer comes to a close, all of a sudden Malachi's doing something and the dramatic music hits. Oh, and here comes the hero to at least his household, Cody Rhodes, making his big return. Who knows?
He's a household hero, got stars in his eyes. He's a household hero. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. He's got one tattoo.
Well, no, he's got two. One on his neck, one on his chest. It's just that they misplaced. They should be in opposite order. But if he comes back, who knows if he has the dyed hair or not, and this whole thing is about Cody getting his big comeback against him, I don't think the fans are going to accept that. This guy is cool. Cody has gone down several degrees to all those fans. If this is all about Cody coming back for a big return as a babyface, I don't know.
Well, we will find out. It depends on how the roads to the top lead. If they've got some potholes in them, we might see him quicker than we thought. Should we run through Rampage? Should we have a Rampage on Rampage real briefly?
Real briefly, because I don't know how much we could talk about. You know, we said it before. I said it. I like it because it's a 1 hour show and it moves quick. But unlike last week's show, which was a major moment that everyone was tuned into, this week's show was taped and it just felt like another show as opposed to a show you had to tune in to see.
Oh, it's not because it was taped. It's because of what they put on the tape. It could be a taped show and still be good, but again, how the mighty have fallen. We went from the penthouse to the outhouse. And that's what this program is schizophrenic. Or this company is schizophrenic. They can do a moment of brilliance and then here we go. And this 1 hour show did not fly by for me. I'll tell you that. Real briefly. As a matter of fact, they even joked about Jericho on color screaming his commentary like his heavy metal singing at the top of the program. Did you hear that?
Well, he joked. He said, I scream, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I just wish you would do it somewhere else, like in the bathroom when no one at home.
So the finals of the tag team tournament, the number one contenders, the Lucha Brothers versus Jungle Boy and Dino Douche. Of course, they can't go anywhere without their little pet dwarf dong sucker, and the Hardley Boys come to the stage and watch. And I wrote, this has all the earmarks of being a complete fucking mess. And here we go. Jungle Boy is amazing when he's with somebody that can work. When they have a match, when he's with somebody that leads him and tells him how to have a match, he sells great. His timing is good. He's an underdog babyface that you get sympathy for and you care about in a wrestling match. When he's in with this goofy partner of his and other opponents that can't lead him, it's a fucking mess. And this was Felix and Jungle Boy started out with one of the most choreographed gymnastics floor routines that I've ever seen. At one point crossing over into the swing dancing era. And all the flips were perfect. They just forgot to look like they weren't cooperating with each other, and they forgot to land any of their strikes in any kind of a convincing fashion. But the flips were perfect. And then Dino Douche got in and started doing the awkward kicks, and they went to the break. And they came back from the break with multiple dives in different directions. There's no babyface team here. There's no heel team. There's no logic. They did simultaneous cold tags so that more guys could start doing moves to each other at random without making any sense. It was sloppy. Felix, in the middle of this complete fiasco, did a great flog splash. Or he could have been flogged. A frog splash off the top rope. It was great. It was, if you viewed that in a vacuum, wow, that guy does a great frog splash. But this rest of this match was complete mayhem and the phoniest, most contrived, fake bullshit spot that I've ever seen, where they set it up so that Felix could Hurricane Rana Jungle Boy off the top turnbuckle onto the floor, onto Dino Douche, Penthouse, and Dwarf Dongsucker, who stood there stock still waiting to catch him for 17 full seconds. Long enough that they had to shoot away from it with the camera, but the people in the building could still see them, these three imbeciles, standing there stock still, friend and foe alike, waiting to catch this guy that's going to come off the top rope, that there's no way that they could have known that he was going to come off the top rope because it took the other guy so long to set that move up. But yet they had faith. Garbage. And it wouldn't end. And then somebody gave Jungle Boy a Canadian Destroyer on the ring apron. They're trying to kill him. And then they gave one off the top rope to Dino Douche, and he kicked out at 1. So then the Lucha Brothers gave him 4 super kicks, one after the other, then a double super kick, then a double team splash for a 2 count. And then they gave him some kind of fucked up double team pile driver and beat the dinosaur. Everybody beat the dinosaur.
It was everyone walk the dinosaur, wasn't it?
Well, no, in this case, everyone beat the dinosaur.
Wasn't that the song?
It was.
Open the door, get on the floor.
Was. Yeah.
Everybody do the dinosaur. Not walk them, do the dinosaur.
And right now I'm screaming, where's Mussolini and Kennedy? Because this was horrible. So we know now that it'll be the Lucha Brothers against the Hardy Boys on the pay-per-view in a cage. And the Hardy Boys jumped in and beat some people up and then ran off. And then the 2 teams, Lucha Brothers and Jungle Boy and Dino Douche, that just tried to cripple each other, hugged and kissed each other and raised each other's arms. It would be hard to find a match worse than this anywhere from any promotion, in my opinion. And we certainly know now that one of the things on the pay-per-view that we can fast forward through is the Lucha Brothers versus the Hardy Boys. Because have we not already seen that multiple times, and do we not already know what it's going to look like?
We've seen those 2 tag teams a lot. This cage match was just seemingly put there for no good reason. Maybe now the reason is just because they've worked so many other matches with gimmicks with these 2 guys, the Lucha Brothers. I'm waiting for the scaffold match, because then something real could happen. But, you know, I'm not a fan of the Young Bucks tag team division and their booking of the tag team division. And, you know, beyond the bad booking of FTR, it's one of the reasons I got so pissed about Cash getting hurt. I had a little bit of hope we'll get a little bit of a FTR Santana and Ortiz program, and we'll see what happens. But I don't like this. I don't like the Jurassic Express too much, although Jungle Boy has some talent and some potential, but eventually potential runs out. You're not going to be the top guy. Lucha Brothers have a good thing at times, but boy, the Young Bucks just don't do it for me.
The Lucha Brothers are great for Lucha Libre, and in Mexico, they accept that style, but it looks, with American eyes, like bullshit. And they don't try to apply any basics of American wrestling that would make it look like it's a contest. They just run and flip and jump. And it is what it is. Same thing every fucking time. Anyway, they did do a package on Punk's return, but there was no Punk on this show live. No Mussolini, no Kennedy. Not even Hirohito.
And I gave WWE some shit recently for false advertising. Don't make it sound like Punk's going to be on the show. You will hear from CM Punk. And then that's what you get.
Yeah, a package.
A package where he spoke for, 30 seconds?
Even with the NFL voiceover, he was in the building, for fuck's sake. Anyway, next up, Miro walks out of the entranceway having chucked Fago del Solo, the minute, microscopic, pasty white fake luchador from Mobile, Alabama.
He's not pasty white. He's a Latino.
Well, he looks pasty white to me.
What?
He's from Mobile, Alabama. Most people from Mobile are pasty white. He's definitely skinny. He chucked him out of the entranceway, and the guy's crawling to the ring. He's the one they gave the contract to, even though he got beat, because he was friends with Sammy Guevara. So Miro is walking to the ring and talking on the microphone while this guy's crawling because he's beating him up in the back. Nobody's coming out trying to do anything. Nobody's reacting to this in any way. He just gets in the ring. He cuts a promo on the guy, rips his mask off to reveal his face. So, of course, Fuego del Solo does what every other masked wrestler does when their mask comes off. He grabs his face, covers his face with his hands. And then Miro super kicks him right in the hands and the face. And the guy takes a bump, but his hands never came off his face. If you've got your hands covering your face and something that you can't even see hits you in the face very hard and you go down, wouldn't you let go of your face? Anyway, Eddie Kingston came out and got in a fight in the ring with Miro, and then the referees hit the ring to pull them apart. And they had a sloppy pull apart, and Miro left. What in the hell was going on here? What in the wide, wide world of sports was happening with old Fuego del Solo?
Well, Fuego del Sol was just to set up this whole angle, which was to set up a match at the pay-per-view. And I'm not going to complain about this. Everything other than his involvement with Kip and Penelope has been good for me. I like Miro. I like him as this kind of, I don't know, weird / crazy, destructive guy who just beats people up. When he pulled his mask off the way he did it, I laughed. I like Miro. I mean,
but it's preposterous. I mean, it's a joke to us now. Of course it is, but it's a joke to us now. Another guy got jumped in the locker room. It's the most dangerous place in wrestling, in the back area. And they just, do they expect somebody to believe that this guy really did jump this guy and beat him up, and now he's crawling to the ring, and there's nobody coming out trying to do anything about it? It's just normal, accepted happenings.
Maybe Fuego was hanging out by a gorilla position, and Miro just surprised him and grabbed him and threw him out there right as he was walking out to do who knows what.
Well, speaking of doing who knows what, here's somebody else I'd like to see thrown out. They had a match between Ty Conti and the Bunny. And the Bunny jump-started it from behind and threw 20 kicks and a running forearm and never touched her opponent once. Did you see that?
Yes, and I will say I have been impressed somewhat with Ty Conti.
You have?
A little bit, yeah. I think
when?
I think Ty Conti has something. The Bunny, though?
It might be contagious.
The Bunny is instant death. As soon as she's on there, the Butcher, the Blade, the Bunny, anyone in that whole jobber crew, I fast forward. So I didn't really watch this.
This match would have stunk in wrestling school with no fans allowed to see it. The boys around the ring would have been fucking laughing. It should have been on some kind of lingerie wrestling pay-per-view because these two look like two drunk strippers on ice. Them trying to work with each other at one point, I said, how can I describe this? I said, okay, it looks like an escape artist trying to get his way out of a straitjacket. That's what it looked like with these two trying to work with each other. It looked like the biggest struggle I've ever seen for anybody to get anything done. And then Ty Conti missed 3 running kicks to the face in the corner. She put them right by and got the Bunny in some hold. And here comes Penelope Ford stalking down the aisle. So here's a third stripper on ice to be heard from. They almost look like twins, 3 blonde, vapid twits that you would expect to see on a reality television show griping about their boyfriends.
Why are you calling them how did Ty Conti get involved in this when she's a vapid twit?
This was one of the worst, most embarrassing matches I've ever seen in my life. And they all look like blonde. They look like John Laurinaitis fantasies that he would have signed out of lingerie catalogs.
I could see that for the Bunny and Penelope. Ty Conti, I think, is a different wrestler.
Well, then she should have been wrestling a different wrestler, because this did nothing for her here. But Penelope Ford comes down the aisle. The girls in the ring stagger around. Penelope Ford distracts the referee. The baker at ringside gives Bunny brass knuckles. And she hit Ty Conti with what I can only describe as the second ever phantom punch after Ali and Liston in Lewiston, Maine. She didn't swing. It was like suddenly she just went boop like that, and suddenly Ty Conti just goes, "Oh, I'll fall over." 1, 2, 3. The brass knuckles left no mark. nor didn't even mess the makeup up on this 120-pound blonde girl. Did you see a punch? Did you see a blow? What happened there?
Again, I was fast-forwarding already by this point.
All right. Well,
seriously, anytime you see the bunny out there and she's like she like makes her faces, it's always the same.
She makes
like,
the face.
You tilt the head, you stick your tongue out. We got it. You got a tongue ring. You know what it's making a lot of the fans think of, but you're boring already. Enough.
Well, no, I can't say that she's boring, because anybody that works like a fucking baby deer on an ice-covered pond is never boring. You never know what's going to happen. It's just not good.
I'm going to take it back. My issue isn't with the bunny. It's with Tony for putting this on TV. Tony, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? You know you shouldn't be on TV.
Well, in more in the category of what are you doing, the main event is a tag team match, and of course they have now the thing on Rampage where Mark Henry does a split screen interview with the participants, and so now there's 3 split screens.
This is the best. By the way, this is the highlight of Rampage every week, the Mark Henry face-to-face.
Yeah, the opponents with Mark Henry in the middle, and they ask some questions, and they promote their match. And this was with Christian Cage and Frankie Kazarian taking on Twinkle Toes and Brandon Cutlet with Don Fallis. That's our main event, and those were the split-screen participants. And, of course, as we all know, Brandon Cutlet is a complete idiot, and Don Fallis makes sure to tell everybody. And it's more comedy from the heels. Christian Cage was trying to be serious in this situation.
The whole time. He's standing there looking at it while they're acting like silly guys. He was being as serious as you could be.
He was trying to sell this issue like anybody was going to buy it. And he said, got in carny bullshit again. It's his favorite new catchphrase. But so the baby faces are being all serious, but Brandon Cutlet is in it and the heels are goofing off. And so, and anyway, they have this match. And again, I like Frankie Kazarian. I like Christian Cage. But Kaz and Cutlet start, and Cutlet's in that stupid zebra striped warm-up suit and the face shield on and all of his goofy gimmicks, and he's portrayed as like a manager. He's ineffectual physically. So Kaz charges him in the corner, and it looks like he's doing a beatdown of Steve Austin. He hit him with 22, I counted, 22 fake-looking punches on Brandon Cutlet in the corner, just windmilling over and over. Why do that? He's a manager at best. And then he goes out and he comes back in and follows up, Kaz does, with one great-looking punch that Cutlet actually could sell. And then but he's beaten Cutlet. I thought at one point Cutlet was supposed to be at least an indie wrestler, but he moves around in the ring like a fan who got to climb in and nobody ran him off. So, and then finally they make Twinkle Toes tag in, and Twinkle Toes reaches under the top rope and over the middle rope to tag Brandon Cutlet. Like that's suddenly become legal, and he doesn't know any difference. Olivier honestly doesn't know how to make a tag. And then Kaz and Twinkle Toes did some fancy prancing and prissy dancing, and then as soon as Kaz tags Christian Cage in, Twinkle Toes tags Cutlet back in because he's working like he's afraid of Christian Cage. And they beat up Cutlet some more. And then Michael Knock It the Fuck Off hit Kaz with his laptop and did some bad, stagey physical comedy about being scared and got tossed over the rail. And then Twinkle Toes beat up Kaz for a while and made his funny faces. And the butt plug face and the Harpo Marx faces and the gesticulating. And then tags Cutlet in. And Cutlet gets in there and not just does a strut like a heel and then goes to work on the baby face while he's down. He goes into a dance routine. And he dances so long that Christian Cage just gets up and starts beating him up again. And then somehow Cage got Twinkle Toes and Cutlet in the corner and got up on the ropes and gave them both the 10 punches together. But Twinkle Toes somehow came back here in a second and nutted Christian Cage around the ring post. But then Twinkle Toes knee lifted Cutlet by mistake, and I just wrote, what the fuck is going on? This is just nonsense. There's just shit going on back and forth. And finally, surprise, surprise, Christian Cage beat Brandon Cutlet in the main event of a national TV show. And I wrote the chant that I was hoping to hear again, "We want Punk, we want Punk." Wow. They went in 1 week from the most memorable wrestling television broadcast of the era to an outlaw show that wasn't even particularly good for independent wrestling. What are they doing?
Easily the worst episode of Rampage so far. I'm not sure.
Well, there's been three. There's been three, so easily the worst so far. It's not like it's a big accomplishment.
But still, the Punk thing was a big moment. And I understand how it's hard to, what do you do the next week? But you got to do something. And in the past, there have been examples when Watts would do a big angle. The next week, things would slow down. But that wasn't what this was. It wasn't like things slowed down. It was just they put some, to me, unappealing matches. Did anyone have any question who was doing the job in that main event? When you saw who was in that main event? No. Did anyone want to see Ty Conti versus the Bunny? Was there a single fan of AEW who was like, oh my God, they're finally doing it. I can't wait to see Ty and the Bunny. They're going to show everyone what they can really do. No. Is anyone really looking forward to the Mark Henry segments?
Now,
Maybe.
I will say that there are probably a lot of people out there that would love to see what Ty Conti and the Bunny could really do, but not in a wrestling match.
And is anyone really excited about another Jurassic Express? I don't know that Jurassic Express and Lucha Brothers have wrestled a bunch of times, but it just seems like so many of these teams have wrestled against each other. Same style of matches, same kind of matches. You know, I'll give AEW a little bit of credit here. Good job on camera work. While those three guys were at ringside hugging each other, waiting for the Hurricane Rana to hit them, the camera didn't show them. You knew they were there. You knew they were standing there. The camera eventually just showed Jungle Boy and Ray Phoenix doing their dance on the rope for a few minutes.
Well, now that we know that Timmy Walbert is there as director, he had the floor shot at first, and then when he saw how long this fucking bullshit was going to take to set up, he had his floor guy to close in on the guys on the top. Don't look at the guys standing there staring stock still.
And then I was excited about the idea Rampage had Dasha as the ring announcer because she's better than Justin Roberts, and it's a different feel than Dynamite. No, he's back as ring announcer now, week 3, on this show. The show's now taped, so it loses the energy. There's going to be live ones again in the future. They were talking about Miami on the show.
I still don't care about being taped or not if it's a good show. Every wrestling show in history was taped once upon a time.
I agree with you, but with AEW, it's a little different. I think they're going to present a different kind of show when it's live than when it's taped. This was a taped show. This felt more like a YouTube show than a national television show. And it's not always the case. I just don't think this was a good episode. It moved quick. It went by quick. The awkwardness of Mark Henry in those segments is becoming one of my favorite things. While he just stands there holding a microphone in the middle, you're watching him the whole time. I love it. But also, I will say one other thing, and this is across the board, and we've talked about it with Dynamite. Tony Khan is spending all this money on talent, and it's going to continue. Spend some money on some talent in the booth, because the commentating across the board is bad. I'm not even going to go off on Excalibur right now. I've given up on that. That's Tony's guy. Tony's going to ride it. Tony likes Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. That's his guy.
I forgot about old excrement working for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Maybe that's why he flings feces at everybody on the show every week.
That may be why. That may be why every move is a tiger driver of some sort. But to me, he's getting to the point where he's the least of the problems. Shivani is the least insightful commentator in wrestling history. He just yells out sayings, expressions, almost like sales pitches. It's almost like he's doing a Ronco commercial. Just, this is amazing! This is unbelievable! Wow, I can't believe it! I'm having such a great time!
And I know that. I heard that where he said, wow, this is great. When it wasn't great. He's just amazed. He doesn't care, I guess, Tony, about wrestling these days. He knows it's gone, and he's just amazed at the tomfoolery that the kids are getting into because he was away for 20 years.
And he's got Tony Khan in his ear. Tony Khan apparently does the Vince McMahon thing to Shivani where he feeds him the lines that he wants on the air. So Shivani says nothing. Jim Ross, I don't know how much longer Jim Ross is going to be doing this. And then there's Rampage. And again, Excalibur is the least of the problems. A 4-man booth is a bad problem to begin with.
Yeah.
When the 4 men include one person who's going to scream the entire time, one person who's going to wait to get some punchlines in because he's smart enough to realize there's not going to be too many moments for me to jump in here. Another guy in Mark Henry who barely says anything unless someone brings him into the conversation, and Excalibur. This is bad. That's where Tony Khan needs to start spending some money. Get some real commentators. Get some good commentators, not just ex-wrestlers.
Any one of those people could be good color guys. Not all of them at the same time.
At the same time? I mean, what is that?
A play-by-play guy with one color guy, not 4. Well, I mean, JR is play-by-play, excrements all over the place. Mark, as you said, just chimes in every once in a while because he's not assertive and he's still inexperienced with this. He's not going to just try to step on everybody.
Taz is the best one of them all, quite frankly.
Yeah, Taz and JR together would be, I think, probably better than the choices they have now. Tony, if Tony had some wrestling to call, he could probably remember how to do it, but he's just looking at all this knucklehead bullshit going on. Oh, wow. You know, it's not, and I mean, again, old Sockface, besides the fact that he drags the visual look down with everything, he sounds like a fan in a basement doing commentary to a VHS tape of somebody else's wrestling. It's just because that's the way he learned how to do it. And he's been doing it that way for 20 years because that's all he's ever done.
I agree.
So, so now they expect him to sound like he's supposed to be on television. It ain't going to happen.
And like I said, he's becoming the point where he's the best of the bunch.
Nobody ever smartened him up to wrestling before they smartened him up to wrestling. If that makes any sense to you, a lot of the boys from my generation will fucking figure that out. But nobody ever smartened Excalibur up to the wrestling business before they smartened him up to the wrestling business. So he's going to sound like a mark in somebody's basement for the rest of his life. But anyway, so, I mean, it's all over you've got the WWE having a fire sale on talent. They're trying, they want to give them away, but Vince won't let them. Who knows if they're going to be sold to Disney or whatever in the future. Most of the programs are horse shit, but every once in a while on NXT, you see some great wrestling. Over on AEW, they go from landmark events to things that ought to be buried in the swamp, and you never know what's going to happen. So this is still interesting times.
It certainly is, and the interesting times will continue on Wednesday this week on the drive-thru.
Yes, because you have tallied up your diaper-changing duties and figure that Wednesday will be the next time that we can get this thing out.
I'm hoping to have a little bit of sleep before Wednesday, and we'll be ready to go.
Well, there you go. But you can keep hoping. But you know what? If you hope in one hand and shit in the other, see which one fills up first.
Well, I'm hoping for sleep, and I know exactly what to do. I'm just going to watch NXT.
All righty, folks. We will be back on this coming Wednesday with the drive-thru, and then we're going to try to get back to our normal schedules. On the drive-thru, we'll have questions, we'll have songs, possibly a SmackDown recap, and any more exciting, newsworthy events. And otherwise, until then, for De Proud Papa, and I'm just your ding-dong daddy. Thank you. Fuck you. Bye-bye, everybody.